The helicopter's rotors screamed above the Atlantic as Kate Sullivan realized the elegant stranger from the gala had just kidnapped her. Adrian Wolf's eyes held no mercy in the dashboard lights, only cold calculation as Miami's glittering skyline disappeared behind them. She'd trusted a smile, a dance, a promise of helping her students. Now her phone was gone, her father's frantic calls unanswered, and they were descending toward a dark island where no one would hear her scream. The most dangerous mistake of her life had begun with a tango and a man whose touch promised either salvation or destruction. If you're hooked, stay until the end to see how this dangerous dance unfolds. Hit that like button and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The Fairmont Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry box tipped on its side, spilling diamonds and champagne across Miami's elite. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light over designer gowns and $1,000 tuxedos, while a string quartet played something elegant and forgettable in the corner. Kate Sullivan stood near the hors d'oeuvres table, feeling like an imposter in a dress she'd bought on sale 3 months ago. She smoothed the burgundy fabric over her hips for the third time in 10 minutes, hyper-aware that her teacher's salary showed in every seam. Around her, Miami's wealthy and powerful air-kissed and network, their laughter sharp as champagne bubbles bursting. She didn't belong here. She knew it. They knew it. But her students needed her to try. The scholarship committee is near the terrace, her friend Michelle had texted earlier. Buttonhole Robert Ashford, if you can. He's approved 3 music programs this year alone. Kate scanned the crowd, searching for the silver-haired philanthropist she'd only seen in photographs. Instead, her gaze caught on a man standing alone near the windows, and everything else in the room seemed to blur at the edges. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings, all sharp angles and brooding shadows. His tuxedo fit like it had been borne on his shoulders, and he held his champagne glass with the casual confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to be anywhere. But it was his stillness that arrested her attention. In a room full of peacocks, he stood like a panther, watching, waiting, entirely self-contained. As if feeling her stare, his eyes lifted and locked with hers. Kate's breath caught. Even across 30 feet of crowded ballroom, the impact of that gaze hit like a physical force. Dark eyes, almost black in the chandelier light, assessed her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Not the lazy appreciation she sometimes got from men at bars. This was different, focused, predatory. She looked away quickly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Excuse me, miss?" A server appeared at her elbow with a tray of champagne. "Would you care for—" "She'll have the Bollinger." The voice came from behind her, low and accented with something Kate couldn't quite place. European, maybe. Or simply the kind of polish that came from expensive international schools and too much time in first-class lounges. She turned to find the dark-eyed stranger standing closer than should have been possible. He'd crossed the room in the seconds she'd looked away, moving with a silence that raised every evolutionary alarm in her hindbrain. Up close, he was devastating. Mid-30s, she guessed, with the kind of masculine beauty that made her fingers itch for a piano. All sharp contrasts and dangerous harmonies. A thin scar traced his left eyebrow, the only flaw in otherwise perfect features. "I don't drink Bollinger," Kate said, finding her voice. "I don't even know what that is." His mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Then you should definitely try it." He plucked 2 glasses from the server's tray with the easy authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed, dismissing the young man with a slight nod. Then he offered her one of the flutes, his long fingers steady as surgery. Kate hesitated. Every instinct screamed that accepting a drink from this stranger was a terrible idea. He radiated danger the way other men radiated cologne. Subtle, expensive, and designed to get under your skin. "I'm Kate," she said, taking the glass without drinking. "Kate Sullivan." "Adrian Wolf." He touched his glass to hers, the crystal singing a single pure note. "You're uncomfortable here." It wasn't a question. "That obvious?" Kate tried for lightness and failed. "You've touched your dress 17 times in the past 5 minutes, Adrian said. "You're scanning exits. And you chose the least populated corner of the room despite this being a networking event." His dark eyes held hers. So either you're casing the place for a robbery, or you'd rather be anywhere else. Kate felt heat rise in her cheeks. Maybe I'm just not good at small talk. Neither am I. He sipped his champagne, still watching her with that unnerving focus. Which is why I never make it. Then what do you call this? An introduction. Adrian tilted his head slightly, studying her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. You're here for the scholarship fund. Music education for underprivileged children. Now Kate's surprise must have shown on her face, because his almost smile deepened. I make it my business to know why beautiful women attend charity galas alone, he said, especially when they look like they're preparing to storm a castle rather than enjoy a party. I teach music at Lincoln Middle School, Kate said, lifting her chin. My students are brilliant, but most of them can't afford instruments, let alone private lessons. I'm here to change that. Noble. The word held no mockery, but Kate bristled anyway. It's important work. I didn't say it wasn't. Adrian's gaze never wavered. But nobility and effectiveness are different things. Have you spoken to anyone on the scholarship committee? Not yet. Because you're standing in the corner, touching your dress and planning your escape. Kate opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. He was right, damn him. The committee has already left, Adrian continued, his voice gentle now. They were here for exactly 45 minutes, made their appearances, and departed at 9:15. You missed them. The disappointment hit like a punch to the stomach. Kate had spent 2 months preparing her presentation, had borrowed this dress from Michelle, had psyched herself up for hours to work this room, and she'd wasted the entire evening being too anxious to act. However, Adrian said, I can help you. Kate looked up sharply. You're on the committee? Better, I fund it. He set his champagne down on a nearby table, giving her his full attention. I'm the primary donor for educational initiatives through the Wolf Foundation. Tell me about your program. For a moment, Kate could only stare. Then professionalism kicked in, and she launched into her pitch, the one she'd practiced until Michelle begged her to stop. She told him about Maria, who'd taught herself guitar using YouTube videos and rubber bands stretched across a shoebox. About James, whose perfect pitch had gone untrained for 12 years because his family couldn't afford a piano. About the way music transformed struggling readers into confident performers, gave structure to chaotic homes, opened doors to scholarships and futures these kids never thought possible. Adrian listened without interrupting, his dark eyes never leaving her face. When she finally ran out of words, breathless and probably talking too fast, he was quiet for a long moment. How much do you need? He asked. Kate blinked. I'm sorry? For instruments, instruction, and program support. How much? 80,000 would cover. Done. The word hit her like a thunderclap. Kate actually took a step back. What? 80,000, Adrian repeated, pulling a business card from his inner jacket pocket. Have your program director contact my foundation Monday morning. We'll expedite the paperwork. Kate stared at the card in his outstretched hand, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. 2 minutes of conversation had accomplished what she'd spent 2 months planning for. It felt too easy, too good to be true. Why? She asked. Adrian's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Because you believe in what you're doing. Because your students deserve a chance. He paused. And because I know what it's like to need music and not have access to it. There was a story there, Kate sensed. Something painful and carefully locked away. She took the card, their fingers brushing for a fraction of a second. The contact sent electricity racing up her arm, ridiculous, impossible, and undeniably real. Thank you, she said softly. You have no idea what this means. I have some idea. Adrian withdrew his hand slowly. Now, would you like to leave this party and do something interesting? Every alarm bell that had quieted during their conversation roared back to life. Interesting? Kate repeated carefully. There's a tango demonstration starting in 20 minutes at a club in Wynwood. Real dancers. Not this. He gestured dismissively at the ballroom. The foundation sponsors them. I thought you might appreciate watching artists who found their voice through music. It was manipulation, Kate realized. Elegant, perfectly calculated manipulation that showed he'd been paying attention to every word she'd said. He'd found exactly the right bait to intrigue her. And despite knowing it was bait, she was intrigued anyway. "I don't know you," she said. "No," Adrian agreed. "You don't. For all I know, you could be dangerous." Something dark flickered across his face, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "Yes," he said quietly. "I could be." The honesty startled her more than a reassurance would have. "But you're going to come anyway," Adrian continued, "because you want to see the dancers, because you're curious, and because—" his gaze held hers, intense and unwavering. "Because you feel it too." "Feel what?" Kate's voice came out barely above a whisper. "This." Adrian moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive with notes of cedar and smoke. "Tell me you don't feel it, Kate Sullivan, and I'll walk away right now." She should lie, should laugh it off and make some excuse about early mornings and lesson plans. Should take his business card and his generous donation and get the hell away from this dangerous stranger who looked at her like he could see straight through to her bones. Instead, she heard herself say, "I feel it." Adrian's smile was slow and absolutely predatory. "Good. My car is waiting." "Awesome." The club occupied a converted warehouse in Wynwood, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Music pulsed through the walls. Not the electronic beats Kate expected, but the raw, aching sound of a bandoneon playing a tango that seemed to have been composed specifically to break hearts. Adrian's hand rested on the small of her back as he guided her through the crowd, his touch proprietary and strangely protective at once. People moved aside for him without seeming to realize they were doing it, responding to some authority he carried in his shoulders and stride. "Mr. Wolfe!" A stunning woman in red appeared at his elbow, her smile bright and practiced. "Your usual table is ready." "Thank you, Elena." The usual table, Kate noted as they were led to a prime spot overlooking the dance floor, was actually a private booth elevated slightly above the crowd. She slid across butter-soft leather while Adrian ordered wine in rapid Spanish that sounded far too fluent to be anything but native. "You speak Spanish," she said, "among other languages." Adrian turned those dark eyes on her again. "Does that surprise you? I'm trying to figure out who you are. Why don't you tell me what you've concluded so far?" He leaned back, utterly relaxed, giving her permission to study him openly. Kate considered. "Wealthy, obviously. European background, but you've spent significant time in Latin America. You're used to getting what you want, used to people deferring to you." She paused. "And you're holding something back, something big." Adrian's eyebrow, the one with the scar, lifted fractionally. "Perceptive." "Music teacher," Kate reminded him. "I spend my days reading teenagers. You're not that different." "No?" His smile was dangerous. "How so?" "You're testing boundaries, pushing to see what you can get away with." She met his gaze steadily. "The difference is my students do it because they're figuring out who they are. You already know exactly who you are. You just want to see if I can handle it." For a moment, Adrian said nothing. Then he laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised and completely unexpected. "You're either very brave or very foolish, Kate Sullivan." "Maybe both." "Definitely both." He leaned forward, his elbows on the table, bringing his face closer to hers. "Which is exactly why you interest me." The wine arrived, cutting off whatever Kate might have said. She watched Adrian taste it, his movements economical and practiced. Everything about him spoke of control, the kind that came from years of discipline or necessity. She couldn't decide which. On the dance floor below, the demonstration began. Kate forgot to breathe. The dancers moved like they were fighting and making love simultaneously, their bodies telling a story of passion and fury and desperate longing. The woman's red dress swirled like blood in water as her partner spun her, caught her, pulled her close enough to whisper secrets or threats. The bandoneon wept, the violin screamed, and the dancers turned violence into art. "It's beautiful," Kate whispered. "It's about power," Adrian said beside her. "The tango. Who leads, who surrenders? The tension between control and abandon." His voice was low, meant only for her. "Would you like to try?" Kate tore her eyes from the dancers. "I don't know how. I'll teach you." Before she could protest, Adrian was standing, offering his hand. The music shifted, the demonstration ending as social dancing began. Couples flooded the floor, but Adrian paid them no attention. He simply waited, his hand extended, his dark eyes holding a challenge. Kate took his hand. He led her to a quieter corner of the dance floor, away from the crush of bodies. His right hand settled on her back, firm and warm through the thin fabric of her dress. His left hand caught hers, his long fingers threading through hers with practiced ease. "The man leads," Adrian said, his mouth close to her ear. "But the woman decides how much to surrender. Every step is a negotiation." Then he moved, and Kate had no choice but to follow. She stumbled at first, certain she'd embarrass herself. But Adrian's lead was so clear, so confident, that her body responded before her brain could interfere. He moved her backward, forward, spun her gently, his hands guiding her through steps she didn't know she knew. "Don't think," he murmured. "Just feel." So she did. Kate let herself sink into the music, into the warm pressure of Adrian's hand, into the dangerous thrill of dancing with a stranger who moved like a predator and held her like she was something precious. The world narrowed to the space between their bodies, the heat of his breath on her temple, the way his thumb traced small circles on her back in time with the music. When he pulled her closer, she didn't resist. When he dipped her backward, she trusted him to hold her. When the song ended and he straightened, bringing her upright with her body pressed against his, she looked up into those dark eyes and knew she was in serious trouble. "Come with me," Adrian said. It wasn't a question, but Kate answered anyway. "Where?" "Somewhere we can talk without shouting over the music." She should say no, should thank him for the evening, collect her purse, and call an Uber back to her small apartment in Coconut Grove. Should put distance between herself and this magnetic, dangerous man who made her forget every self-preservation instinct she'd ever developed. "Okay," Kate heard herself say. Adrian's smile was triumph and promise wound together. He kept hold of her hand as he led her through the club, stopping only to speak briefly with Elena. Then they were outside. The Miami night heavy and warm, and a sleek black Mercedes was pulling up to the curb. The driver appeared like magic, opening the rear door. Kate hesitated on the sidewalk. This was it, the moment where she could still walk away. Where this was just an interesting story she'd tell Michelle over wine, about the mysterious benefactor who'd funded her program and swept her off her feet for one perfect evening. "Kate." Adrian stood beside the open car door, his hand still holding hers. "I promise you're safe with me." It was the wrong thing to say, because the way he said it, with absolute certainty and something that sounded almost like regret, made Kate realize he was promising something he might not be able to deliver, that perhaps she wasn't safe with him at all. She got in the car, anyway. So they drove through Miami's nighttime streets, the city's neon-bright hustle, giving way to quieter neighborhoods, and finally to the empty roads leading to the marina. Kate watched the lights blur past the tinted windows, acutely aware of Adrian's presence beside her, the careful distance he maintained despite the car's intimate space. "Where are we going?" she asked. "The marina. I keep a yacht there." Adrian glanced at her, gauging her reaction. "I thought we could watch the city from the water, talk without interruption." "A yacht?" Of course he had a yacht. "You do this often?" Kate tried to keep her tone light. "Take music teachers on mysterious midnight adventures?" "No." Adrian's answer was simple and direct. "Never, actually." "So I'm special?" "You have no idea." The Mercedes pulled up to a private dock where a sleek vessel waited, all white surfaces and gleaming chrome, even in the darkness. But Kate's attention caught on something else. A helicopter sitting on the yacht's upper deck, its rotors still. "You have a helicopter," she said stupidly. "I travel frequently." Adrian helped her out of the car, his hand warm and steady on her elbow. "Sometimes roads are inconvenient." The yacht's crew materialized, two men in crisp white uniforms who nodded respectfully to Adrian and completely ignored Kate. They moved with military precision, she noticed. Not the casual efficiency of yacht crew, but something harder, more disciplined. Warning bells chimed softly in the back of her mind. "This way." Adrian guided her aboard, his hand never leaving the small of her back. They climbed a teak staircase to the upper deck, where the Miami skyline spread before them like a scatter of jewels on black velvet. "It's beautiful," Kate said, meaning it. "Yes." But when she looked at Adrian, he was watching her, not the view. The tension between them stretched taut as piano wire. Kate felt it in her chest, her throat, the rapid pulse at her wrists. They stood too close on the empty deck, the night air warm and thick with salt and possibility. Adrian moved first. His hand came up to cup her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. Kate's breath caught. She should step back, should laugh this off, should do any of the 1,000 sensible things she'd learned in 24 years of being careful and responsible and good. Instead, she swayed closer. "Kate." Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a curse. "If you don't want this, tell me now." But she did want this. Wanted it with an intensity that frightened her, wanted to know how this dangerous man's mouth would taste, wanted to feel the controlled power in his body directed at her. "Don't stop," she whispered. Adrian kissed her like he danced, with total confidence and devastating skill. His mouth claimed hers, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pulled her against him. Kate made a sound she'd be embarrassed about later, her hands fisting in his tuxedo jacket as she kissed him back with everything she had. Heat flooded through her, burning away caution and common sense. Adrian's tongue traced her lower lip, and she opened for him, drowning in the taste of wine and want. His hand tightened in her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss, and Kate went boneless against him. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Come with me," Adrian said against her mouth. "Where?" Kate's voice didn't sound like her own. "Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can protect you." The words penetrated the haze of desire. Kate blinked, pulling back slightly. "Protect me? From what?" Something shifted in Adrian's expression, a crack in his perfect control. "From what's coming." Before Kate could process that cryptic statement, before she could demand answers, one of the crew members appeared at the top of the stairs. "Sir," he said in accented English, "we need to leave now." "Understood." Adrian's transformation was instant, from passionate lover to cold commander in a heartbeat. He turned to Kate, his hands gripping her shoulders. "I need you to trust me." "Adrian, what's happening?" "I'll explain everything, but right now we need to go." "Go where?" Kate tried to pull away, real fear beginning to cut through the desire. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on." Adrian's jaw tightened. "Your father is prosecuting the Montero cartel. 3 days ago, they put a contract on you to leverage him into dropping the case. I've been watching you for 2 weeks, waiting for them to make their move." The words hit like hammer blows. Kate actually stumbled backward. "That's insane. My father is a prosecutor, yes, but he's about to bring down one of the largest drug trafficking operations in the hemisphere." Adrian cut her off. "And they will kill you to stop him. The team they sent is already in Miami. I've been tracking their communications all evening." Kate's mind reeled. "You're lying. This is some kind of sick—" "Your phone." Adrian held out his hand. "Give it to me. Now." "No!" But he was faster. His hand shot out, plucking her small clutch purse from her numb fingers. He opened it, removed her phone, and before Kate could react, threw it over the yacht's railing into the dark water below. "What the hell?" Kate shouted. "They're tracking you through it." Adrian grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the helicopter. "We're out of time." "I'm not going anywhere with you. You're insane." Kate tried to wrench free, but his grip was iron. The crew member, the one who'd interrupted them, appeared on her other side, boxing her in. Together, they propelled her toward the helicopter despite her struggles. "Let me go!" Kate screamed. "Someone help! Help me!" But the marina was empty, the other yachts dark, and her voice disappeared into the Miami night. "I'm sorry," Adrian said, and he sounded like he meant it, "but I can't let them kill you." He lifted her bodily into the helicopter, following her in and slamming the door shut behind them. The crew member took the pilot's seat, the rotors already beginning to turn. Kate lunged for the door, but Adrian caught her around the waist, pulling her back with strength that shouldn't have surprised her but did. "Stop fighting," he said in her ear, his voice hard now. "I'm trying to save your life." "By kidnapping me?" Kate twisted in his arms, managed to drive her elbow into his ribs. He grunted but didn't release her. The helicopter lifted off. Kate watched through the window as the Miami skyline fell away. The glittering city that had been so beautiful moments ago, now looking like a trap she'd barely escaped. Or perhaps a safety she'd been torn from. She couldn't tell anymore. Adrian forced her into one of the seats, producing zip ties from somewhere. "No," Kate said, real terror flooding her now. "Please, no. I'm not going to hurt you." He secured her wrists in front of her, tight enough to restrain but not tight enough to cut off circulation. "But I can't have you trying to jump out mid-flight." "Where are you taking me?" Tears burned Kate's eyes, fury and fear mixing into something combustible. Adrian knelt in front of her, his dark eyes meeting hers. "Somewhere they'll never find you. Somewhere I can keep you alive until this is over." "You're a monster," Kate spat. Pain flickered across his face. "Yes," he said quietly. "I probably am." Then he moved to the co-pilot seat, leaving Kate bound and helpless as the helicopter carried her away from everything she knew into the darkness above the Atlantic. Through the window, she watched Miami disappear. Watched the lights fade to pinpricks and then to nothing. Watched the ocean spread beneath them like spilled ink, vast and empty and utterly uncaring. Kate had spent her whole life being careful, being responsible, making good choices. And one dance, one kiss, one moment of trusting the wrong man had just cost her everything. The helicopter's rotors screamed into the night, carrying her toward an island she couldn't see, to a fate she couldn't imagine, in the grip of a man who'd promised to protect her, but felt like the most dangerous threat she'd ever faced. Whatever came next, Kate knew with absolute certainty, nothing would ever be the same. The island materialized from the darkness like something conjured from a fever dream. Kate watched through tear-blurred eyes as the helicopter descended toward a sprawling mansion perched on cliffs above churning black water. Floodlights blazed to life as they approached, illuminating manicured grounds that looked obscenely beautiful against the wild ocean beyond. The moment the skids touched down, Adrian was unbuckling her restraints. His hands were efficient, impersonal, nothing like the gentle touch that had cradled her face an hour ago. Kate jerked away from him the second her wrists were free, scrambling for the door. "Don't run," Adrian said, his voice carrying a warning. Kate ran anyway. She made it perhaps 10 steps across the helipad before strong arms caught her from behind. Not Adrian, one of the crew members, his grip professional and unyielding. Kate screamed, thrashed, drove her heel backward into his shin. He didn't even grunt. "Enough!" Adrian's voice cut through her panic like ice water. "Mateo, let her go!" The arms released her. Kate spun, breathing hard, and found Adrian standing 5 feet away with his hands raised in a gesture of peace that meant absolutely nothing. "You kidnapped me," Kate snarled. "You threw away my phone, tied me up, and flew me to the middle of nowhere. Don't you dare tell me what's enough." "You're right." Adrian's expression was unreadable in the harsh floodlights. "But screaming won't help. There's no one to hear you for 30 miles in any direction." The words landed like a physical blow. Kate looked around wildly, seeing only ocean and darkness beyond the mansion's grounds. No other lights, no boats, nothing but isolation so complete it made her chest tighten with fresh panic. "My father will find me," she said, hating how her voice shook. "He'll tear this city apart looking for me." Something dark crossed Adrian's face. "I'm counting on it. Come inside." He turned and walked toward the mansion without checking if she followed, his posture radiating the absolute certainty that she would. Kate stood frozen on the helipad, her mind racing through impossible options. She could try swimming, except the cliffs were sheer and the ocean looked murderous in the darkness. She could hide on the grounds. Except where? And for how long? Mateo cleared his throat behind her. Kate glanced back to find him watching her with something that might have been sympathy. "The boss isn't lying about the danger," he said in accented English. "If you were still in Miami right now, you'd be dead. How convenient that I'm supposed to just believe that." "Believe what you want," Mateo shrugged. "But you're safer here than anywhere else on Earth right now. That's not a threat, it's a fact." He walked away, following Adrian toward the mansion. After a long moment, Kate followed too. Not because she believed them, but because standing alone in the darkness felt more terrifying than walking into whatever trap waited inside. The mansion's interior looked like something from an architecture magazine, all clean lines, expensive art, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. Adrian stood in the massive living room, shrugging out of his tuxedo jacket. Without it, he looked somehow more dangerous, all lean muscle and coiled tension beneath the white dress shirt. "You'll stay in the East Wing," he said, not looking at her. "Second door on the left. There are clothes in the closet, toiletries in the bathroom, everything you need. Except my freedom." Now he did look at her, his dark eyes reflecting the recessed lighting. "Your freedom wouldn't do you much good with a bullet in your skull." "Stop saying that." Kate's control finally snapped. "Stop acting like you're some kind of savior when you're the one who seduced me and lied to me, and I never lied to you. You said I was safe with you, and you are." Adrian moved closer, his movements controlled despite the anger flashing in his eyes. "Do you know what the Montero cartel does to people they want to make examples of? They don't just kill you, Kate. They make it last. They record it. They send pieces of you to your family to prove a point." Kate's stomach lurched. "You're trying to scare me." "I'm trying to make you understand what I just saved you from." Adrian stopped an arm's length away, close enough that she could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. "3 men were waiting outside your apartment building tonight. Another 2 were staking out the school. They had photos, equipment, a van with soundproofed walls. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "How do you know that?" Kate's voice came out barely above a whisper. "Because I've been tracking them since they arrived in Miami 4 days ago." Adrian's expression hardened. "Because I've spent 2 years inside their organization, earning their trust, learning their methods. Because the contract on your life came through channels I monitor, and the moment I saw your name, I knew I had to get you out." Kate's mind reeled. "You're, what, some kind of undercover agent?" "Something like that. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting tonight." Adrian turned away, running a hand through his dark hair. "You're exhausted, you're terrified, and you need sleep. We'll talk more in the morning." "I want to call my father." "No." The flat refusal made Kate's hands curl into fists. "He'll think I'm dead. Or worse. He'll think you disappeared from the gala, which is exactly what happened." Adrian faced her again. "If you contact him now, you compromise everything. The cartels have people everywhere, police departments, FBI field offices, prosecutors' offices. One phone call could lead them straight here." "So what? I'm just supposed to vanish? Let him suffer?" "Better he suffers temporarily than you die permanently." Kate wanted to scream, to throw something, to make this man feel even a fraction of the fear and fury churning inside her. Instead, she forced herself to take a breath, to think. "You said you funded my music program." Adrian's eyebrow lifted slightly. "I did. The money will transfer Monday morning as promised." "So that was real? Not just some elaborate setup?" "The foundation is real. Your program will get every penny I promised." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "I meant what I said about your students deserving a chance. It was such a small thing, one truth in an ocean of manipulation and terror. But Kate found herself clinging to it anyway, desperate for something solid to hold on to. "Show me my room," she said quietly. Adrian nodded and led her through the mansion's gleaming corridors. The East Wing was quieter, more intimate than the vast public spaces. He stopped at a door and pushed it open, revealing a bedroom that was somehow both luxurious and comfortable. Cream-colored walls, a massive bed with soft linens, French doors opening onto a private balcony. "The doors are locked from the outside," Adrian said. "But there's an emergency release button beside the bed if there's a fire or other danger." "So I'm a prisoner." "You're protected." He met her eyes steadily. "There's a difference." Kate walked into the room, putting distance between them. "When my father finds you, and he will find you, he's going to destroy you for this." "Probably." Adrian leaned against the doorframe, looking suddenly, impossibly tired. "But you'll be alive to watch it happen." He pulled the door closed, and Kate heard the lock click into place. She stood in the center of the beautiful prison, shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline crash. Then she walked to the French doors and tested them. Locked, as promised. The balcony beyond looked out over the ocean, the water invisible now except where moonlight caught the tops of waves. Kate sank onto the bed and finally let herself cry. harsh, ugly sobs that tore from her chest and left her gasping. She cried for the terror of the helicopter ride, for her father's inevitable panic, for the death of the perfect evening she'd thought she was having, for the way Adrian's kiss had made her feel alive and reckless, and how completely that had been a lie. Except it hadn't felt like a lie. That was the worst part. Eventually the tears ran dry. Kate dragged herself to the bathroom, stripped off the burgundy dress that now felt contaminated, and stood under the shower until the hot water ran cold. There were clothes in the closet as promised, expensive casual wear in exactly her size, which was somehow more disturbing than the locks on the doors. She pulled on soft pajama pants and a t-shirt, climbed into bed, and absolutely did not expect to sleep. She was unconscious in minutes. Kate woke to sunlight streaming through gauzy curtains and the distant cry of seabirds. For one blissful moment, she thought the previous night had been a nightmare. Then she saw the unfamiliar room, felt the expensive sheets against her skin, and memory crashed back in a sickening wave. She sat up slowly, disoriented. The bedside clock read 9:47 a.m. She'd slept nearly 10 hours. A knock sounded at the door. Kate tensed, but instead of Adrian's voice, she heard a woman's. "Miss Sullivan, I'm bringing breakfast." The lock clicked. A woman in her 50s entered carrying a tray, her expression professionally neutral. She wore simple clothes and moved with quiet efficiency, setting the tray on a small table near the balcony doors. "I'm Carmen," she said. "I manage the household. If you need anything, please let me know." Kate found her voice. "I need to leave." Carmen's expression didn't change. "I understand this is difficult, but Mr. Wolf has asked that you eat something. You'll feel better with food." She left before Kate could respond, the door locking again behind her. Kate approached the tray warily, half expecting, what, drugged food? But the coffee smelled incredible, and the breakfast was simple and fresh, tropical fruit, toast, scrambled eggs. Her stomach reminded her that she'd barely eaten at the gala. She ate mechanically, her mind churning. If Adrian was telling the truth about the cartel, then her father was in danger too. He'd be going out of his mind looking for her. And if Adrian was lying, if this was some sick game, then she needed to find a way out before whatever he was really planning began. The French doors, she decided. They were locked, but the balcony was only on the second floor. Maybe she could climb down, find a boat, get to the mainland. The door opened again. Adrian stood in the hallway, dressed casually now in dark jeans and a black t-shirt that showed off the lean muscle of his arms. In daylight, without the tuxedo's civilized veneer, he looked even more dangerous. "We need to talk," he said. Kate stood, lifting her chin. "I want to see proof of the men you claim were watching me, of this supposed contract." Adrian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Follow me." He led her through the mansion to a room that looked like something from a spy thriller. Banks of computer monitors, sophisticated communications equipment, file cabinets with serious locks. Mateo sat at one of the workstations, but he left wordlessly when Adrian entered. Adrian touched a keyboard and several monitors flickered to life. Kate watched, her stomach sinking, as surveillance footage played across the screens. There, her apartment building, time-stamped from 2 nights ago. A dark van parked across the street, 2 men sitting inside. Another camera angle showing a man with a telephoto lens positioned to watch her windows. "That's Diego Herrera," Adrian said, pointing to the man with the camera. "Enforcer for the Montero organization. 12 confirmed kills, probably 3 times that many unconfirmed." He clicked to another feed. The school where Kate taught, children streaming out at day's end. 2 different men leaning against a fence, watching. Ramon and Teo Salazar, brothers, specialists in abductions. Kate's knees went weak. She grabbed the edge of the desk for support. Adrian pulled up documents next. Intercepted communications, flight manifests, hotel records. A picture emerged of a coordinated operation targeting her specifically, timed to when her father's prosecution was reaching its critical phase. "Your father is set to testify before a grand jury in 6 days," Adrian said quietly. "That testimony will seal indictments against 15 high-ranking cartel members, including Carlos Montero himself. The contract on you was meant to make him withdraw. Why didn't you just go to the police, the FBI?" "Because there's a leak." Adrian's jaw tightened. Someone inside law enforcement has been feeding information to the Monteros. That's how they knew about your father's testimony schedule. That's how they knew your routine, your address, everything. Kate stared at the screens, feeling reality shift beneath her feet. So you actually did save me. I told you I would keep you safe. Adrian turned to face her fully. I know how this looks, Kate. I know you're terrified and angry, but I need you to understand that every choice I made last night was to keep you alive. The gala, the tango, the kiss. Kate's voice cracked. Was any of that real? Something raw flashed across Adrian's face. The timeline accelerated. I'd planned to approach you differently, to explain before... He stopped, composed himself. But when I saw you at the gala, when I realized you were alone and vulnerable in a public place where they could easily take you, I had to move fast. That's not an answer. No, Adrian agreed. It's not. The honesty was worse than a lie would have been. Kate turned away from him, staring at the monitors showing her normal life transformed into a hunting ground. How long? She asked. How long do I have to stay here? Until we dismantle the operation completely. Until your father's testimony is secured and the leadership is arrested. Adrian moved to stand beside her, careful not to touch. 2 weeks? Maybe 3? A month at most. A month. Kate felt the walls closing in. I need air, she said abruptly. I can't be in this room right now. The grounds are secure, Adrian said. You can walk anywhere on the property, just don't try to reach the water. Kate fled before he could say anything else, her chest tight and her thoughts spiraling. She found her way outside into gardens that were almost aggressively beautiful. Tropical flowers she couldn't name, perfect green lawns, paths winding between palm trees and flowering shrubs. She walked without direction, trying to process everything. Her father was in danger. She was trapped on an island with a man who'd kidnapped her to save her life. The career she'd built, the students she'd planned to help, all of it suspended while she hid from killers she'd never known existed. Kate found herself at the edge of the property where manicured grounds gave way to wild scrub. A stone wall marked the boundary, and beyond it, she could see the ocean crashing against rocks far below. The view was spectacular and horrible, beautiful enough to break your heart, isolated enough to trap you forever. The north side has gentler beaches. Kate spun to find Adrian had followed her, keeping his distance but close enough to talk. She hadn't heard him approach. Are you following me? She demanded. I'm making sure you're safe. I'm safe because I'm your prisoner on a private island. That's not the same thing as actually being safe. Adrian's expression tightened. You want to be angry with me? Be angry. You've earned that right. But don't confuse protection with imprisonment. You locked me in my room to keep you from doing something desperate in the middle of the night. He took a step closer. If you want to walk the property, explore the house, use the pool, the library, anything, you can. I'm not keeping you in chains, Kate. Just a gilded cage. Better than a coffin. The bluntness of it stole her breath. Kate turned back to the ocean, watching waves explode against rocks in bursts of white foam. Tell me about you, she said finally. If we're going to be stuck here together, tell me who you really are. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he moved to lean against the stone wall beside her, his gaze on the horizon. I grew up in Buenos Aires, he said. My father was a businessman, legitimate as far as I knew then. My mother was a pianist. She taught music to children in our neighborhood. He paused. Like you do. Kate glanced at him sharply, but he wasn't looking at her. When I was 16, my younger brother Marco got involved with a local gang. Drugs at first, then worse things. My mother tried to help him, tried to save him. His voice went flat. The gang didn't appreciate the interference. They killed her and made it look like a robbery. Kate's anger wavered. Adrian, my father revealed his real business then. He had connections, resources. He tried to get revenge through those channels, but it only made things worse. Marco died in the crossfire, 14 years old. Adrian's hands gripped the stone wall hard enough that his knuckles went white. My father drank himself to death within a year. I was 18, alone, and I realized that the only way to stop these organizations was from the inside. So you became, what? A criminal? I became whatever I needed to be. He finally looked at her, his dark eyes haunted. I've done things I'm not proud of, Kate. Things that keep me awake at night. But every contract I've helped disrupt, every operation I've helped destroy, it's one less family that has to bury someone they love. Kate processed this, studying the man beside her. The expensive clothes, the private island, the easy authority. She'd assumed it was all inherited wealth and privilege. Instead, it was camouflage, a cover built over years of pain and determination. The music school, she said softly. The one you want to build at the end. It's for Marco. Adrian's jaw tightened. It's for all the Marcos. All the kids who could be saved if someone just gave them another option. They stood in silence, the ocean roaring beneath them. Kate felt her fury bleeding away, replaced by something more complicated. Sympathy, maybe? Or recognition. I'm still angry with you, she said finally. I know. You had no right to make choices for me. I know that too. Adrian turned to face her fully. But given the same situation again, I'd make the same choice. Your life is worth more than your freedom to choose. That's not your decision to make. No, he agreed. It's not. Kate wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the righteous fury that had sustained her through the night. But looking at Adrian now, really looking at him, she saw the weight he carried, the cost of the choices he'd made. He'd saved her life. He was also the reason she needed saving in the first place, inadvertently or not. It was too much to process. I need time, Kate said, to think, to figure out what happens now. Adrian nodded. Take all the time you need. Just stay on the property, please. He walked away, leaving Kate alone with the ocean and her chaotic thoughts. She stayed there for a long time, watching the water and trying to make sense of a world that had transformed overnight from familiar to impossible. By the time she returned to the mansion, the sun was high overhead and her head ached from too much thinking. Carmen appeared with lunch, her professional courtesy unchanged. Kate ate on the terrace, picking at food she couldn't taste, and tried to imagine 2 weeks of this. 3 weeks. A month. She'd go insane. That evening, Kate explored the mansion properly. The library held thousands of books in multiple languages. The music room made her heart ache. A beautiful grand piano, guitars, a cello, sound equipment that probably cost more than her annual salary. She sat at the piano and played angry, crashing chords until her fingers hurt. When she emerged, Adrian was waiting in the hallway. Better? He asked. No? But Kate's voice lacked the sharp edge from earlier. Do you play? Not well. The piano was my mother's. He gestured toward the room. You can use it whenever you want. The whole room is yours if you'd like. It was an offering, Kate realized, a small peace gesture in the war zone of their forced cohabitation. Thank you, she said grudgingly. Over the next 3 days, they established a careful détente. Adrian gave Kate space, appearing only for meals or brief check-ins. She explored the island, swam in the pool, played the piano until her fingers remembered what music felt like. Carmen was always nearby but never intrusive, providing food and fresh towels and carefully neutral companionship. Kate tried not to think about her father, but guilt gnawed at her constantly. Tried not to think about her students starting a new semester without her. Tried not to think about the life that was continuing without her back in Miami. On the 4th morning, she woke to voices outside her window. Male voices, arguing in rapid Spanish. Kate pressed close to the glass and saw Adrian and Mateo standing near the helicopter pad, their body language tense. She couldn't hear the words clearly, but she caught fragments. Movement in the city. Accelerated the timeline. Not safe to... Ice flooded Kate's veins. Something had changed. She dressed quickly and found Adrian in his surveillance room, staring at monitors with an expression that made her stomach drop. What happened? She demanded. Adrian looked up, surprised to see her. Then his expression shuddered. Nothing you need to worry about. Don't lie to me. I heard you arguing with Mateo. He hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her. Finally, he sighed. Your father went public. Press conference yesterday afternoon, announcing he won't be intimidated by threats against his family. He essentially painted a target on his back. Kate's knees went weak. He's trying to draw them out, away from me. Yes. Adrian's voice was grim. Which means they'll escalate. They can't afford to look weak now, not with international media watching. You have to protect him. Kate moved closer, her hands gripping the edge of the desk. Please, whatever resources you have, I've already made calls. Adrian met her eyes. The FBI is putting a protection detail on him. People I trust. But Kate, you need to understand, your father just made himself a target, and there's only so much I can do from here. The walls felt like they were closing in again. Kate's father was in danger because of her, because she'd disappeared, because he was trying to save her without knowing she was already safe. I have to contact him, Kate said. I have to let him know I'm okay. Absolutely not. He's risking his life because he thinks I'm in danger. He's risking his life because he's a stubborn man who won't be bullied, Adrian corrected. And if you contact him now, you confirm that someone took you, which gives the cartels leverage. Right now, they don't know where you are or who has you. That uncertainty is your best protection. Kate wanted to scream. So he just suffers? Thinks I'm dead or worse? He thinks you disappeared, which is the truth. Adrian's voice softened slightly. I know it's hard, but we're close, Kate. Your father's testimony is in 2 days. Once that happens, once the indictments are sealed, the immediate threat drops significantly. 2 days. Kate felt tears burning behind her eyes. You said weeks. You said things accelerated. Adrian stood, moving around the desk toward her. But that's good news. 2 more days and we can start planning your return. Kate turned away from him, not wanting him to see her cry. She'd been holding it together, staying strong, but the thought of her father in danger because of her was too much. She felt Adrian's hand gentle on her shoulder. Kate. She spun and shoved him, hard. Adrian stumbled back a step, more from surprise than force. This is your fault, Kate shouted. All of this. If you'd found another way. There was no other way. Adrian's voice was steady despite the fury in his eyes. I've spent 2 years setting this up, building the cover, earning the trust. You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to drag an innocent woman into this nightmare? Then why did you? Kate was crying now, angry tears streaming down her face. Why not just let the FBI handle it? Why make it personal? Because they had your name. Adrian grabbed her shoulders, his control finally cracking. Because I saw your photo in that file, saw what they planned to do to you, and I couldn't let it happen. They stood frozen, both breathing hard, the air between them electric with anger and something more dangerous. Why? Kate whispered. Why do you care what happens to me? Adrian's hands tightened on her shoulders. His dark eyes searched her face, and Kate saw the moment his control shattered completely. Then he kissed her. It was nothing like the kiss on the yacht. That had been seduction, strategy, a means to an end. This was raw and desperate and completely honest. Adrian kissed her like he was drowning and she was air, his hands tangling in her hair, his body pressing her back against the desk. Kate should have pushed him away, should have used this moment of weakness to what? Escape? Demand answers? Instead, she kissed him back just as desperately, her fingers fisting in his shirt, her body arching into his. All the fear and anger and confusion of the past 4 days poured into that kiss, transforming into something that burned through her veins like wildfire. When Adrian finally pulled back, they were both shaking. That's why, he said roughly. That's why I care. Then he released her and left the room, leaving Kate trembling and furious and terrified by how much she'd wanted that kiss to continue. Kate stood alone at the surveillance room, her fingers pressed against her lips as though she could still feel the heat of Adrian's mouth on hers. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened monitors, wild-eyed and flushed, looking like someone she didn't recognize, someone who kissed her captor, someone who wanted him to come back. She forced herself to move, to leave the room before she did something even more foolish like chase after him. Her feet carried her through the mansion's corridors without conscious direction, past Carmen, who pretended not to notice Kate's disheveled state, past the music room where the piano sat silent and accusing. She ended up on the terrace overlooking the ocean, gripping the railing hard enough that her knuckles went white. 2 days. Her father would testify in 2 days, and then this nightmare could begin to end. Kate clung to that timeline like a lifeline, even as part of her whispered that nothing about this situation would end cleanly. Adrian had kissed her like a man confessing something he couldn't say aloud, and she'd kissed him back like a woman who'd already made her choice without admitting it. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold that looked like the world was bleeding. Kate watched darkness creep across the water and tried not to think about what came next. She didn't see Adrian again that evening. Carmen brought dinner to her room with the same professional courtesy, but Kate caught the older woman's gaze lingering on her face with something that might have been concern or might have been pity. She picked at the food, showered, and lay awake in the too-soft bed while her mind replayed every moment of that kiss in excruciating detail. When she finally slept, her dreams were a confused tangle of Adrian's hands in her hair and the sound of helicopter rotors, and her father's voice calling her name from somewhere she couldn't reach. Kate woke to shouting. She bolted upright in bed, heart hammering, as raised voices echoed through the mansion. Male voices, urgent and sharp. She grabbed the robe hanging in the closet and ran to her door, pressing her ear against the wood. Can't be sure it's them. That was Mateo, his accented English tight with stress. The satellite picked up movement an hour ago. Adrian's voice cold and controlled in a way that made Kate's skin prickle. 3 boats, running dark, heading straight for us. That's not a coincidence. Could be fishermen, could be... At 3 a.m, in these waters? A pause. They found us. The words hit Kate like a physical blow. She wrenched at the door handle, forgetting it would be locked, then remembered the emergency release button. She slammed her palm against it, and the lock disengaged with a soft click. The corridor was empty, but light spilled from the surveillance room. Kate ran toward it, her bare feet silent on the cool tile. She reached the doorway just as Adrian was pulling on a tactical vest over his black t-shirt, checking the magazine of a handgun with practiced efficiency that spoke of muscle memory and experience. "What's happening?" Kate demanded. Adrian's head snapped up, his eyes going hard when he saw her. "You need to get back to your room, now. You said they found us." "Kate, don't you dare lock me in a room when people are coming here to kill me." Her voice rose sharply. "I have a right to know what's happening." Adrian exchanged a glance with Mateo, some wordless communication passing between them. Then he holstered the gun and crossed to one of the monitors, pulling up a grainy satellite feed. 3 boats, he said tersely, pointing to 3 dark shapes moving across the water toward the island. They've been running without lights since they left the mainland. ETA approximately 20 minutes. Kate's mouth went dry. How did they find us? I don't know. The admission clearly cost him. This location was supposed to be completely secure. Either someone talked or... He stopped, his expression darkening. Or the leak goes deeper than I thought. What do we do? Kate hated how small her voice sounded. Adrian turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her breath catch. Mateo and I are going to hold them off while you get to safety. There's a safe room in the basement, reinforced steel, separate air supply. You'll stay there until... No. Kate shook her head. I'm not hiding while you fight people who are here because of me. You don't have training. You don't have weapons. Adrian's voice went sharp. You'll be a liability, and I can't protect you if I'm worried about you getting shot. Then give me a weapon. Teach me. In 20 minutes? Adrian's laugh was bitter. Kate, this isn't a movie. These are trained killers, and they won't hesitate to... An explosion rocked the mansion. Kate stumbled, catching herself against the desk as the lights flickered. Alarms began shrieking throughout the building, a mechanical wail that set her teeth on edge. Adrian was already moving, shoving a second tactical vest at Mateo and barking orders in rapid Spanish. That was the north generator, Mateo reported, his eyes on the monitors. They're hitting our power first. Smart. Adrian pulled Kate toward the door. Change of plans. The safe room's electrical lock just became a death trap. We're getting you off the island. How? Kate ran beside him as they raced through the mansion, Carmen appearing from somewhere with a go bag that Adrian slung over his shoulder without breaking stride. The helicopter. Adrian hit the stairs, taking them 3 at a time with Kate struggling to keep up. Mateo will fly you to the mainland while I hold them here. You can't stay alone. I can buy you enough time. They burst through a door onto the grounds, the night air heavy with smoke and the smell of burning electronics. In the distance, Kate could see flames licking up from the north side of the property. That's all that matters. They were halfway to the helicopter pad when gunfire erupted from the tree line. Adrian tackled Kate to the ground, his body covering hers as bullets tore through the air above them. She felt the impact as rounds hit his tactical vest, heard his grunt of pain even through the Kevlar. Then he was dragging her behind a stone fountain, using it as cover while he returned fire with controlled 3-round bursts. "Mateo!" Adrian's shout cut through the chaos. "Get to the bird!" Kate saw Mateo sprinting toward the helicopter, firing behind him as he ran. Then her attention snapped back to Adrian as he grabbed her face between his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice deadly calm despite the bullets chipping at the fountain above them. "When I say run, you run straight for that helicopter. Don't look back, don't stop, don't think, just run. Do you understand? Adrian, do you understand?" He shook her slightly, his dark eyes blazing with an intensity that stole her breath. "Yes," Kate whispered. "Good." He pressed a quick, hard kiss to her forehead. "I'm sorry I got you into this. I'm sorry for all of it." Then he was moving, rising from cover to lay down suppressing fire while shouting, "Run! Now!" Kate ran. Her bare feet slapped against stone and grass as she sprinted toward the helicopter, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Behind her, Adrian's gunfire created a steady rhythm, punctuated by the sharper crack of return fire from the trees. She didn't let herself look back, didn't let herself think about anything except reaching Mateo and the promise of safety beyond this nightmare island. She was 10 feet from the helicopter when Mateo's head exploded. Kate's scream died in her throat as the pilot's body crumpled, blood and worse things painting the helicopter's white exterior. She skidded to a stop, her mind refusing to process what she'd just seen, and in that frozen moment of horror she heard Adrian roar her name. Strong hands grabbed her from behind. Kate fought on pure instinct, kicking and clawing, but her attacker was stronger and trained for this. He wrapped an arm around her throat, cutting off her air, and dragged her backward toward the trees. "Got the girl!" he shouted in accented English. "I've got—" The gunshot was impossibly loud. The man holding Kate jerked once, his grip loosening, and then he was falling, taking her down with him. Kate scrambled away from the body, gasping, and looked up to see Adrian running toward her. He didn't make it. 3 men burst from the tree line, weapons raised. Adrian dove for cover behind a marble statue, but Kate saw the impact as a bullet caught his shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, his gun skittering across the grass. "No!" Kate's voice came out raw and broken. The men advanced on Adrian's position, their weapons trained on where he'd fallen. Kate's mind raced, driven by pure terror. If they killed him, she was dead anyway. If they took her, her father would never stop looking, would walk into every trap they set until he was dead too. She saw Adrian's fallen weapon 3 feet away. Kate didn't think. She dove for the gun, her hands closing around unfamiliar metal and polymer. One of the men turned toward her, shouting in Spanish. But she was already raising the weapon the way she'd seen in movies, her finger finding the trigger. The recoil shocked through her arms as the gun fired. The shot went wide, missing completely, but it made the men scatter. That split second of distraction was all Adrian needed. He came up from behind the statue like a demon, blood streaming from his shoulder, but his movement still precise and deadly. His knife, Kate hadn't even seen him draw it, flashed in the moonlight as he took down the first man with brutal efficiency. The second man swung his rifle around, but Adrian was faster, disarming him and breaking his arm in one smooth motion before driving the knife up under his ribs. The third man ran. Adrian let him go, instead dropping to his knees as blood loss and adrenaline crash hit simultaneously. Kate ran to him, the gun forgotten as she pressed her hands against the wound in his shoulder, trying desperately to stop the bleeding. "You shot at them," Adrian said, his voice strained but carrying a note of disbelief. "You actually shot at them." "I missed." "You distracted them. That's what mattered." He caught her wrist with his good hand. "The boat. We need to get to their boat before that one who ran brings reinforcements." "You're bleeding." "I've bled before." Adrian struggled to his feet, swaying slightly. "Move. Now!" They stumbled through the grounds toward the cliffs where stone steps led down to the water. Kate could hear shouting from the mansion, more gunfire, explosions that suggested Adrian's remaining security wasn't going down without a fight. But Carmen, the thought hit her like ice. Carmen was in there. "We can't just leave them," Kate said. "They knew the risks." Adrian's voice was harsh, but she heard the grief underneath. "And if we don't move, They died for nothing. The stairs down the cliff face were treacherous in the darkness, slick with spray from the violent waves below. Kate held on to Adrian as much as he held on to her, both of them half falling down the carved stone steps. She could feel him getting weaker, his breath coming in pained gasps, and she knew he was losing too much blood. The boat waited at a small dock carved into the rock, its motor still running. Adrian nearly fell getting into it, and Kate had to help him to one of the seats before turning to the controls. "I don't know how to drive a boat," she said. "Pull back the throttle. Steer away from the island." Adrian's eyes were starting to glaze. "Kate, listen. There's a GPS unit under the console. Coordinates programmed for a safe location. Just follow it." "Adrian, you need a hospital." Can't risk." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "They'll be watching hospitals. Just get us to the coordinates. There's help there." Kate found the throttle, pulled it back the way he'd described, and felt the boat surge forward. She steered them away from the burning island, away from the gunfire and the bodies and the wreckage of what was supposed to be safety. Behind them, Adrian's mansion blazed against the night sky like a funeral pyre. She found the GPS unit right where Adrian said it would be, a small screen showing a route to coordinates she didn't recognize. The boat bounced hard over the waves, each impact making Adrian grunt in pain, but Kate kept them on course with hands that shook so badly she could barely grip the wheel. "Stay with me," she said, not sure if she was talking to Adrian or herself. "Just stay with me." Adrian's response was a weak laugh. "Bossy." "I mean it. You don't get to save me just to die and leave me alone on a boat in the middle of the ocean." "Wouldn't dream of it." But his voice was fading, his head lolling back against the seat. Kate pushed the throttle harder, racing across dark water toward coordinates she had to trust were real. The mainland appeared as a distant scatter of lights, growing slowly larger. She checked the GPS obsessively, making tiny corrections to keep them on course, while behind her, Adrian's breathing got shallower. "Talk to me," she demanded. "Tell me something. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about the music school you want to build. Tell me anything." "My mother," Adrian said slowly, each word an effort, "had hands like yours. Piano player's hands. Long fingers." He coughed again. "She used to say music was the only language that couldn't lie, that you could hide your feelings with words, but music told the truth." "She sounds wise." She was. Too wise for the world she lived in. Adrian's eyes drifted closed. "I wanted to save her. Save Marco. Thought I could fix everything if I just tried hard enough." "You were 16. Old enough to fail." His hand found hers on the wheel, his grip weak but present. "Don't want to fail you too, Kate." "Then don't die," Kate said fiercely. "Because if you die after making me care about you, I'll never forgive you." Adrian's eyes opened, focusing on her face with effort. "You care?" "I shot at armed men for you. I'm pretty sure that counts." His laugh was barely a breath. "Fair point." The GPS announced they were approaching the destination coordinates. Kate throttled back, squinting at the dark shoreline. Nothing looked obviously safe or welcoming, just rocky coast and scrub vegetation. Then she saw it, a small dock with a single light and a figure waiting. Kate brought the boat alongside the dock with a jarring thud that made Adrian hiss in pain. The figure, a woman, Kate saw now, middle-aged with salt and pepper hair, was already moving, reaching down to help secure the boat. "Dios mío!" the woman exclaimed when she saw Adrian. "How bad?" "Shoulder wound. Lost a lot of blood." Kate helped maneuver Adrian out of the boat, the woman taking his weight with surprising strength. "I'm Dr. Reyes," the woman said to Kate. "Marina Reyes. I've been expecting Adrian's call, though not quite like this." She studied Kate with sharp eyes. "You must be Kate Sullivan. How do you—" "Later. Help me get him to the house." Together they half-carried Adrian up a narrow path to a small house tucked into the hillside. Inside was clearly a medical facility masquerading as a residence, examining table, proper lighting, cabinets full of supplies. Dr. Reyes worked with practiced efficiency, cutting away Adrian's blood-soaked shirt and assessing the damage. "Bullet went through," she announced. "Messy, but no major vessels hit. He's lucky." "Doesn't feel lucky," Adrian muttered. Dr. Reyes ignored him, already prepping instruments. She glanced at Kate. This will take time. There's a bathroom through that door if you need to clean up. Coffee in the kitchen. You look like you're about to collapse. Kate looked down at herself and felt shock ripple through her. She was covered in blood. Adrian's blood from pressing her hands to his wound. Her feet were cut and bleeding from running barefoot across the grounds. The thin pajamas and robe she'd thrown on hours ago were torn and filthy. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "You're in shock." Dr. Reyes's voice gentled slightly. "I need to work on Adrian without worrying about you passing out. Go, clean up. I'll call you when he's stable." Adrian's hand caught Kate's wrist. "She's right. Go." "I don't want to leave you." "I'm not going anywhere." His grip tightened fractionally. "Promise." Kate let herself be led to the bathroom. Let the doctor press clean clothes into her hands. Let the door close between her and Adrian. Then she stood in front of the mirror and stared at a stranger with wild eyes and blood on her face and trembling hands. She'd killed someone tonight. The thought hit her with delayed force. The man who'd grabbed her, the one Adrian had shot. But she'd been holding the gun. She'd pulled the trigger. She'd been ready to take a life to protect Adrian. The fact that she'd missed didn't change the intent. Kate turned on the shower and stood under scalding water until her skin turned red, scrubbing away blood and gunpowder residue and the smell of smoke. She washed her hair 3 times, watching pink water swirl down the drain, and tried not to think about Mateo's body or the men Adrian had killed or the possibility that Carmen was dead because of her. When she finally emerged, dressed in the borrowed clothes that hung loose on her frame, Dr. Reyes was washing blood off her hands at the kitchen sink. "He's stable," the doctor said before Kate could ask. "Sedated. He'll sleep for several hours while his body starts to heal." Relief hit Kate so hard her knees buckled. She caught herself against the counter, breathing hard. "Sit." Dr. Reyes guided her to a chair, pressing a mug of coffee into her hands. "Drink. Then we need to talk." Kate sipped the coffee automatically, barely tasting it. "How do you know Adrian?" "I've been part of his network for 5 years. He sends me people who need medical care off the books." Dr. Reyes sat across from her. "I know what he does, what he risks. And I know he wouldn't have brought you here unless the situation was desperate. They found us, on the island. I don't know how, but they found us." "Adrian has enemies," the doctor said carefully. "More than you probably realize. What he's built, the intelligence network, the undercover identity, it's made him extremely valuable and extremely vulnerable." Kate set down the coffee mug. "What aren't you telling me?" Dr. Reyes was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her words. Adrian's operation was always going to end one of 2 ways. Either he successfully brought down the Montero cartel and disappeared into witness protection, or they discovered his real identity and killed him. She met Kate's eyes. "Tonight suggests they may have done both." "What do you mean?" "If they found the island, they have resources Adrian didn't anticipate, connections he didn't know about, which means his cover may be compromised." The doctor's expression was grim. "And if Carlos Montero knows who Adrian really is, knows he's been inside the organization for 2 years feeding information to law enforcement, he'll kill him," Kate finished. "He'll do much worse than that first." "Doctor," Reyes stood, refilling Kate's coffee. "You need to understand something about the man sleeping in my examination room. Adrian Wolf isn't his real name. His real identity is so deeply buried that even I don't know it. The foundation, the yacht, the island, all of it is cover. Everything he is, everything he appears to own, is designed to make him appear to be exactly what the cartels look for in their money launderers and business partners." Kate's mind reeled. "So who is he really?" "A man who's been undercover so long I'm not sure even he remembers anymore." The doctor's voice held sadness. "A man who's sacrificed everything, his identity, his relationships, any chance at a normal life, to destroy the organization that murdered his family. His mother and brother. He told you about them?" Surprise flickered across Dr. Reyes' face. "That's unusual. Adrian doesn't share personal information. Ever. He said his mother was a pianist, that she taught children." Kate wrapped her hands around the warm mug. "Like I do." Understanding dawned in the doctor's eyes. "Ah, that explains it." "Explains what?" "Why he broke protocol to save you." Dr. Reyes leaned against the counter. In the 5 years I've known Adrian, I've never seen him deviate from his mission. He's calculated, controlled, willing to let people die if it serves the larger objective. It's what makes him effective and what's kept him alive. She paused. But he couldn't let die. Even though extracting you compromised his position, even though it put his entire operation at risk. Kate felt something twist in her chest. Because I reminded him of his mother. Because you gave him something to protect beyond the mission. Someone real, not just an abstract concept of justice. The doctor's gaze was uncomfortably perceptive. And I think he gave you something too, didn't he? Something you weren't expecting. Kate thought about the kiss in the surveillance room, about Adrian's hands in her hair and the desperation in his voice when he said, "That's why I care." About running toward a helicopter while he laid down cover fire, about the terror that had consumed her when she thought he might die. "I don't know what I feel," she admitted. "That's honest, at least." Dr. Reyes moved toward the examination room door. "You should sleep. There's a spare bedroom upstairs. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." But Kate shook her head. "Can I sit with him? I need to see that he's okay." The doctor's expression softened. 10 minutes? Then you sleep." The examination room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors tracking Adrian's vitals. He looked younger in sleep, the harsh lines of his face relaxed, dark hair falling across his forehead. Someone, Dr. Reyes presumably, had cleaned the blood from his skin and bandaged his shoulder with professional precision. Kate pulled a chair close to the bed and took his hand, careful of the IV line running into his arm. His fingers were long and elegant, she noticed. Piano player's hands, like his mother's. "You're an idiot," she told his unconscious form. "Staying on that island to fight them alone. You could have died." Adrian's breathing remained steady, undisturbed by her words. "My father testifies tomorrow," Kate continued softly. "That's what you said, right? Tomorrow, everything changes. The cartel leadership gets arrested, the threat ends, and we can go back to our real lives." She laughed bitterly. "Except I don't think either of us has a real life to go back to anymore." The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Kate squeezed his hand gently. "Dr. Reyes says you've been undercover so long, you've forgotten who you really are. But I don't think that's true." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I think you know exactly who you are. You're the man who risked everything to save a stranger. The man who wants to build a music school for kids who need another option. The man who kissed me like it was the truest thing you'd ever done." Kate sat back, wiping at her eyes with her free hand. She was so tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way she'd never experienced before. The adrenaline that had carried her through the attack, through the boat ride, through watching Dr. Reyes dig a bullet fragment out of Adrian's shoulder, had finally burned away, leaving nothing but hollow fatigue. "Don't die," she whispered. "Please, I need you to not die." Dr. Reyes appeared in the doorway. "Kate, bed, now." This time Kate didn't argue. She squeezed Adrian's hand once more, then followed the doctor upstairs to a small bedroom that smelled like lavender and sea air. She fell into bed fully clothed and was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She dreamed of fire and gunshots and Adrian's blood on her hands. Dreamed of her father standing in an empty courtroom, calling her name while men in shadows closed in around him. Dreamed of a music classroom filled with students she'd never get to teach, their voices asking where she'd gone and why she'd abandoned them. Kate woke with tears on her face and sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then memory crashed back, the attack, the boat, Adrian bleeding while Dr. Reyes worked to save him. She threw off the blankets and ran downstairs. Adrian was awake. He sat propped up in the examination bed, his shoulder heavily bandaged, drinking coffee with his good hand while arguing with Dr. Reyes in rapid Spanish. Both of them turned when Kate burst through the door. "You're awake," she said stupidly. Adrian's expression shifted, something complicated moving behind his dark eyes. "So are you." Dr. Reyes looked between them with barely concealed amusement. "I'll give you two a moment. Kate, there's breakfast in the kitchen." She left, closing the door behind her. Kate and Adrian stared at each other across the small room, the morning light harsh and unforgiving. "How do you feel?" Kate asked finally. Like I got shot. Adrian set down his coffee. How do you feel? Like I watched you get shot. Fair. He shifted carefully, wincing at the movement. Kate, about last night, you kissed me. I did. And then you almost died. I'm aware. Adrian's mouth quirked in something that wasn't quite a smile. For what it's worth, the timing wasn't ideal. Kate crossed the room until she stood beside his bed, looking down at him. Why did you kiss me? You know why. Tell me anyway. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Because I've spent 2 years pretending to be someone I'm not. And when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend. Because you make me remember there's something worth protecting beyond the mission. Because... He stopped, his jaw tightening. Because when I saw your photo in that file, saw what they planned to do to you, something in me broke, and I knew I'd burn down everything I'd built to keep you safe. The words hung in the air between them, honest and raw and terrifying in their implications. Adrian, Kate said softly, I don't even know your real name. I know. Pain flickered across his face. And I can't tell you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. That's not... We can't... Kate struggled to find words. How am I supposed to feel something for someone who doesn't exist? I exist. Adrian reached up with his good hand, his fingers brushing her jaw. This, what I feel when I look at you, what I felt when I thought they might kill you, that's real. Maybe the most real thing about me. Kate closed her eyes, leaning into his touch despite every logical reason not to. This is insane. Completely. You kidnapped me. To save your life. You're a criminal. I'm trying to stop criminals. I don't know who you really are. Neither do I anymore. Adrian's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But I know I want to find out, and I know I want you there when I do. Kate opened her eyes and found him watching her with an expression that made her heart ache. She thought about the music school he wanted to build, about the way he'd held her while they danced, about his body covering hers while bullets flew overhead, about the fact that he'd risked everything, his mission, his life, 2 years of careful planning, because he couldn't stand the thought of letting her die. My father testifies today, she said. In 3 hours, Adrian confirmed. And then? And then the people who wanted you dead will be in custody. The immediate threat ends. But not the danger to you. Kate caught his wrist, holding his hand against her face. Dr. Reyes said your cover might be compromised, that Carlos Montero might know who you really are. Adrian's expression went carefully blank. Marina talks too much. Is she right? He was quiet for so long Kate thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. Probably. Someone gave them the island's location, someone with access to information that should have been completely secure. His dark eyes held hers. Which means I'm burned. After your father testifies, after the arrests are made, I'll disappear into witness protection. New name, new life, new everything. The words hit Kate like ice water. You're leaving. I have to. When? As soon as it's safe. Adrian's hand dropped away from her face. Kate, you need to understand, there's no version of this where I get a happy ending. I've done things, been part of things, that can't be undone. The best I can hope for is survival, and maybe, if I'm lucky, some small measure of peace. Kate pulled back, her arms wrapping around herself. So what? I was just... what? A distraction? Someone to protect until you could disappear? No. Adrian's voice went sharp. You were never that. Then what was I? A reminder that there's still something worth being human for. The words came out raw and angry. Do you have any idea what it's like, Kate? Spending years pretending to be someone you despise, doing things that make you sick, watching people die because you can't break cover? I was drowning in it. And then I saw you, and for the first time in 2 years, I remembered what it felt like to want something that wasn't about revenge or justice or destroying the people who destroyed my family. I just wanted... He stopped, breathing hard, his good hand clenched in the blankets. Wanted what? Kate whispered. You, Adrian said simply. I wanted you. Want you. Present tense, not past. The confession hung between them, achingly honest. Kate stood frozen, her mind warring with her heart. This man had kidnapped her, lied to her, dragged her into a nightmare that had nearly killed them both. He was about to disappear into a new identity, leaving her behind to rebuild a life that would never be the same. And she was falling for him anyway. "This is so stupid," she said, catastrophically. "We barely know each other." "True. And you're about to vanish forever." "Most likely." Adrian met her eyes steadily. "So if you want to walk away, Kate, now's the time. Go back to your life. Teach your students. Marry someone normal and safe. Forget I ever existed." Kate thought about her small apartment in Coconut Grove, her classroom full of kids who needed her, the careful, responsible life she'd built. She thought about what it would mean to choose that life again, to pretend the last week had never happened. Then she thought about Adrian's hands in her hair and the way he kissed her like she was oxygen, about the music school he wanted to build in his brother's memory, about the man behind the mask who'd saved her life at the cost of everything he'd worked for. "I can't," she admitted. "I should, but I can't." Something broke in Adrian's expression, relief and regret and want all tangled together. "Kate," she kissed him before he could finish, leaning down to press her mouth to his with all the confusion and anger and desperate need churning inside her. Adrian made a sound low in his throat, his good arm coming around her to pull her closer, despite the pain it must have caused. The kiss was softer than before, less desperate and more devastating for it. Kate poured everything she couldn't say into that kiss. "I'm terrified and furious and falling for you, and I hate that I'm falling for you, and I don't want you to disappear." When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "We're going to regret this," he said. "Probably," Kate agreed. "But not yet. Not yet." Outside the small examination room, the morning sun climbed higher, and in Miami, Kate's father prepared to walk into a courtroom that would change everything. The future was uncertain, dangerous, and probably doomed. But for this one moment, Kate let herself have something she wanted instead of something she should want. And in the morning light, with Adrian's hand cupping her face and his eyes holding promises he might not be able to keep, it felt like enough. Dr. Reyes returned to find them still inches apart, Kate's hand resting on Adrian's chest and his fingers tangled in her hair. The doctor cleared her throat pointedly, and Kate pulled back with heat flooding her cheeks. "Your father's testimony begins in 2 hours, Dr. Reyes said, her tone professionally neutral, despite the knowing look in her eyes. "I have a secure feed if you want to watch." Kate's stomach clenched. "Can he see me? If I'm on the feed?" "It's one way. You can see the courtroom, but no one can see you." The doctor moved to check Adrian's bandages, her movements efficient. "Though I should warn you, watching might be harder than not watching." "I need to see it," Kate said. "I need to know he's safe." Adrian's hand found hers, squeezing gently. "Then we'll watch together." Dr. Reyes set them up in a small office with a laptop connected to what she called a highly illegal but extremely secure federal court feed. Kate sat beside Adrian on a worn leather couch, hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched, shoulder to shoulder, thigh to thigh, his hand still holding hers like an anchor. The screen showed an empty courtroom, all dark wood and imposing architecture designed to intimidate. Slowly it filled with people, lawyers in expensive suits, court officers, journalists relegated to the back rows. Then her father entered, and Kate's breath caught. He looked terrible. Thomas Sullivan had always been a commanding presence, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of steel-gray hair that made him look distinguished rather than old. But the man on the screen looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. His face was gaunt, dark circles shadowing his eyes, and he moved with the careful precision of someone holding themselves together through sheer will. "He thinks I'm dead," Kate whispered. "He thinks you're missing," Adrian corrected gently. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Kate couldn't tear her eyes from her father's face. "Look at him, Adrian. He's dying inside." Adrian's grip on her hand tightened, but he didn't argue because they both knew she was right. The proceedings began with the kind of formal legal language that Kate couldn't follow. She watched her father take the stand, watched him swear to tell the truth, watched the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman in a navy suit, begin her questioning. At first, the testimony was dry, technical. Financial records? shipping manifests, encoded communications that her father had helped decrypt. Then the prosecutor asked, "Mr. Sullivan, in the course of your investigation, did the Montero organization attempt to interfere with your work?" Kate's father's jaw tightened visibly. "Yes." "Can you describe the nature of that interference?" "Objection," called a defense attorney, rising smoothly. "Relevance." "Your Honor, this goes directly to the witness's credibility and the lengths to which the defendants have gone to obstruct justice," the prosecutor countered. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, considered. "I'll allow it. Answer the question, Mr. Sullivan." Kate's father looked directly at the camera. Not at Kate. He couldn't know she was watching, but the effect was the same. "6 days ago, my daughter disappeared. Catherine Sullivan, age 24, a music teacher at Lincoln Middle School. She attended a charity gala and never came home. No phone calls, no messages, no trace." His voice cracked on the last word, and Kate felt tears spill down her cheeks. "And you believe this disappearance is connected to your testimony?" the prosecutor asked. "I know it is." Her father's hands gripped the edges of the witness stand. "2 days before she vanished, I received an anonymous message. It contained photos of Catherine, at school, grocery shopping, walking to her car. The message said I had 1 week to drop my investigation or I'd never see my daughter again." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The judge called for order, her gavel sharp as a gunshot. "Did you drop the investigation, Mr. Sullivan?" "No." Her father's voice was steel now. "Because I know that these people don't make deals. They don't honor agreements. Even if I had withdrawn, even if I'd destroyed every piece of evidence I'd gathered," his voice broke again, "they would have killed her anyway. So I made a choice. I chose to make her disappearance mean something." Kate sobbed outright now, her free hand pressed to her mouth. Adrian pulled her against his good side, his arm around her shoulders, and she buried her face in his chest while her father's testimony continued. "Mr. Sullivan, I need to ask you about the substance of your investigation," the prosecutor said, her voice gentler now. "Can you walk us through what you discovered about the Montero organization's operations?" What followed was devastating. Kate's father laid out 2 years of meticulous investigation, the drug routes from South America into Miami, the money laundering operations hidden behind legitimate businesses, the network of corruption that reached into police departments and federal agencies. He named names, showed documents, connected dots that painted a picture of an organization that had poisoned communities and destroyed lives with impunity for decades. And through it all, his voice never wavered, though his eyes remained haunted. "He's using his grief as a weapon," Adrian said quietly. "Every person in that courtroom is watching a father who's already lost everything. The jury won't be able to look at the defendants without seeing the man whose daughter they took." "He hasn't lost everything," Kate said fiercely. "I'm alive." "He doesn't know that." Adrian's voice was heavy. "And until this is over, we can't tell him." And on screen, the prosecutor finished her questioning and the defense attorneys took their turn. They tried to break Kate's father's testimony, to find inconsistencies or bias, but he was unshakable. He'd built his case too carefully, documented everything too thoroughly. When they tried to suggest his daughter's disappearance was unrelated to the case, a personal matter, perhaps a boyfriend, a voluntary absence, his look could have melted steel. "My daughter," he said with deadly calm, "is a music teacher who dedicates her life to helping children. She has no criminal associations, no debts, no reason to disappear, but she does have a father who is about to destroy the largest drug cartel on the eastern seaboard. So you tell me, counselor, what seems more likely?" The defense attorney had no response to that. The testimony lasted 3 hours. When it finally ended and her father stepped down from the stand, Kate saw him stumble slightly. A bailiff caught his elbow, but her father waved him off, straightening his shoulders and walking out of the courtroom with his head high. Dr. Reyes closed the laptop. "The grand jury will deliberate, but with testimony like that, the indictments are all but guaranteed. I'd expect arrests to begin within hours." "Including Carlos Montero?" Kate asked, her voice rough from crying. "Especially Carlos Montero," Adrian said. "Your father just gave them everything they needed to—" His phone rang, cutting him off. Adrian pulled it from his pocket one-handed, frowning at the screen. "I need to take this." He stood carefully, wincing at the movement, and walked into the hallway. Kate watched him through the open door, saw his expression shift from neutral to shocked to coldly furious in the span of seconds. When? He demanded. How many? A pause. I don't care what it takes. You find them. All of them. I want... He stopped, listening, and his face went pale. Confirm that, right now. I need to know if... Adrian's eyes met Kate's through the doorway, and she saw naked fear in them. He ended the call and came back into the room, his movements stiff with more than just pain. We need to leave. Now. Dr. Reyes was already moving, gathering medical supplies. How bad? Worst case scenario. Adrian grabbed Kate's hand, pulling her to her feet. The arrest started 20 minutes ago. Simultaneous raids across 3 states. But Carlos Montero wasn't at any of his known locations. Kate's blood went cold. What does that mean? It means he knew the raids were coming. It means the leak goes higher than we thought. Adrian was already heading for the door, dragging Kate with him, despite his injured shoulder. And it means he's got nothing left to lose. Adrian, you're in no condition to... Dr. Reyes started. I'm in condition to keep Kate alive, and that's all that matters. He turned to the doctor. We need a car, something fast and untraceable. The garage, keys are on the hook. Dr. Reyes pressed a bag into Kate's hands. Supplies, money, burner phones, go. Kate barely had time to thank her before Adrian was pulling her through the house and into an attached garage that held a nondescript sedan. He tossed her the keys. You're driving, he said, climbing into the passenger seat. I'll navigate. Where are we going? Kate started the engine, her hands shaking. The port. There's a shipment arriving today. The last major operation the Montero organization had planned. If Carlos knows he's about to be arrested, he'll want to salvage what he can, which means he'll be at the port, Kate finished, pulling out of the garage, with everyone he has left. Adrian was already on his phone, typing rapidly. And if he knows I'm the one who burned him, if he knows I fed information to your father, he'll kill you. He'll try. Adrian looked at her, his dark eyes serious. Kate, I need you to listen very carefully. We're going to the port because it's the only way to end this. Once Carlos is in custody, once the operation is completely dismantled, you'll be safe. Your father will be safe. But getting there is going to be dangerous, Kate said. I know. More than dangerous. These are desperate people with nothing left to lose. He reached over, his hand covering hers on the steering wheel. If something happens to me, you run. You don't look back, you don't try to help, you just run. Promise me. I'm not promising that. Kate, you don't get to save my life and then ask me to let you die, she said fiercely. So no, I'm not promising. We do this together or not at all. Adrian stared at her for a long moment, then laughed. A short, sharp sound of disbelief and something that might have been pride. You're going to get us both killed. Maybe, but at least we'll go down fighting. The drive to the port took 40 minutes that felt like 40 hours. Adrian spent the time on his phone, coordinating with people Kate didn't know, using code words she didn't understand. The federal agents who'd conducted the raids, she gathered, were now converging on the port based on intelligence Adrian was feeding them. But they were coming from across the state, and time was running out. The shipment arrives in 30 minutes, Adrian said, ending another call. If Montero's people can get it loaded and out to sea before the feds arrive, they'll disappear the cargo and Carlos will have leverage. Enough product to rebuild, enough money to run. So we stopped them, Kate said. We survived them, Adrian corrected. The feds stopped them. We just need to... Gunfire erupted from somewhere ahead. Kate slammed on the brakes as bullets punched through a warehouse wall to their left, glass and concrete exploding outward. Adrian grabbed her, forcing her head down as he peered over the dashboard. They're already here, he said grimly. The feds, I mean. Someone jumped the gun. More gunfire, sustained and heavy. Kate heard shouting in Spanish and English, the scream of sirens approaching from multiple directions. Adrian grabbed the bag Dr. Reyes had packed and pulled out a gun, a different one from the island, Kate noticed numbly, but just as lethal looking. Stay in the car, he ordered. Lock the doors. If anyone who isn't me or wearing a federal badge approaches, you drive straight through them. Understand? Adrian, you can't... Your shoulder will hurt like hell, but that's not new. He checked the gun's magazine, his movements automatic despite the pain that tightened his features. Kate, promise me you'll stay here. Before she could answer, before she could argue or beg him not to go, he was out of the car and moving toward the chaos with the fluid grace of someone who'd done this too many times before. Kate lasted approximately 30 seconds before she followed him. She grabbed the second gun from the bag, smaller than Adrian's, probably meant for her, though she had no idea how to use it beyond pointing and pulling the trigger. Then she was running after him, keeping low, using abandoned shipping containers as cover while gunfire echoed through the port like thunder. She found him crouched behind a forklift, returning fire at a group of men who'd taken position near a cargo ship. His shoulder was bleeding again, fresh red soaking through the bandages, but his hands were steady as he fired. "I told you to stay in the car," he shouted when he saw her. "And I ignored you." Kate dropped down beside him. "What's the plan?" "The plan was for you to be safe." "New plan," Kate said, "because I'm here and I'm not leaving." Adrian looked like he wanted to strangle her. Then more gunfire forced them both flat against the concrete, and there was no more time for arguing. The battle was chaos. Federal agents in tactical gear swarmed from multiple directions, their movements coordinated and professional. But Montero's people fought back with desperate ferocity, knowing this was their last stand. Kate heard someone screaming orders in Spanish, heard the distinctive crack of a rifle, heard engines roaring as trucks attempted to flee the port. "There!" Adrian pointed to the cargo ship where a man in an expensive suit was climbing the gangway, surrounded by armed guards. Even from this distance, Kate could see his fury, could see him shouting orders that sent his men scattering to new positions. "Carlos Montero?" she asked. "The one and only." Adrian's jaw tightened. "He's trying to get to the ship. If he makes it aboard and they cast off, the feds can't touch him without international incident. So we stop him." "We are not stopping him. The federal agents with body armor and backup are stopping him." Adrian grabbed her arm. "We're getting you somewhere safe before—" An explosion rocked the port, the concussive force throwing them both sideways. Kate's ears rang as she struggled to her hands and knees, tasting blood and concrete dust. Through the smoke, she saw one of the federal vehicles engulfed in flames, saw agents scattering, saw Montero's men using the chaos to advance. Adrian was already moving, firing at targets Kate couldn't see, his face set in lines of grim determination. She followed because staying put seemed stupider than moving, because every instinct she had screamed that separating from him right now would be fatal. They made it to a stack of shipping containers that provided better cover, but Kate could see they were being flanked. Montero's men were moving with military precision, cutting off escape routes, boxing them in. Adrian saw it too, his expression darkening. "When I say run," he said quietly, "you run for that warehouse." He pointed to a building 50 yards away where federal agents were establishing a defensive position. "You tell them Adrian Wolf sent you. They'll protect you." "What about you?" "I'm going to make sure you get there." He pulled a knife from somewhere. Kate hadn't even known he was armed with one, and his smile was sharp and terrible. "Go low and fast. Ready?" "Adrian, I need you to trust me one more time, Kate." His dark eyes held hers. "Please." Kate thought about the tango, about trusting him to hold her when she leaned back into empty air, about the way he'd covered her body with his own while bullets flew, about every moment of the past week when he'd put her life above his own. "I trust you," she said. "Then run." Adrian stood in open fire, drawing every gun in the vicinity toward his position. Kate ran, her legs pumping, her breath coming in ragged gasps as bullets kicked up concrete around her feet. She heard Adrian behind her, heard the steady rhythm of his gunfire covering her escape, and she ran harder. She was 10 feet from the warehouse when the shooting stopped. Kate skidded to a halt, spinning around in time to see Adrian on his knees, surrounded by 4 men with guns trained on his head. Blood streamed from his wounded shoulder and a new injury on his side, but his eyes found hers across the distance and blazed with fury. "Run!" he shouted. "Kate, run!" She couldn't. Her feet were rooted to the concrete as one of the men, older, gray-haired, wearing that expensive suit, stepped forward and pressed a gun to Adrian's temple. Carlos Montero smiled. "The famous Adrian Wolf," he said in accented English, loud enough for Kate to hear. "Or should I call you Agent Santos? I've been trying to find your real name for months. Imagine my surprise when I finally did." Kate's world tilted. "Agent Santos. Adrian's real name, the identity he'd buried so deep even Dr. Reyes didn't know it. "Kate!" Adrian's voice cracked. "Please!" But Montero's eyes had found her now, his smile widening with vicious satisfaction. "Ah, the prosecutor's daughter. How perfect." He gestured to his men. "Bring her." Two of them started toward Kate. She raised the gun she'd forgotten she was holding, her hand shaking so badly the barrel wavered. "I'll shoot," she warned, her voice breaking. "You won't," Montero said confidently. "You're a music teacher, not a killer. You don't have it in you." He was right. Kate knew he was right. She'd already proven on the island that she couldn't pull the trigger when it mattered, that whatever violence Adrian possessed didn't live in her. But she could do something else. Kate turned the gun away from Montero's men and aimed it at the fuel drums stacked against a nearby warehouse. She had no idea if this would work, if bullets could actually ignite gasoline like they did in movies, if this was brilliant or suicidal. "Let him go," she said, "or I shoot the drums and we all burn." For the first time, Montero's smile faltered. "Don't be stupid, girl." "I've been stupid since the moment I met him," Kate said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "What's a little more?" "Kate." Adrian's voice was strained. "Don't. Please, just run." She ignored him, keeping her gun trained on the drums. "I'll count to 3. 1. Montero's men shifted nervously, their guns swinging between Kate and the fuel drums. 2. "Wait." Montero held up a hand. "Let's talk about this. You want Agent Santos alive. We can make a deal." "I don't make deals with people who murder children," Kate said, thinking of Adrian's brother Marco, of all the families these men had destroyed. 3. She pulled the trigger. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened. Then the fuel drums erupted in a fireball that turned night into day, the explosion so massive it threw everyone to the ground. Kate felt heat sear her skin, felt the concussive force drive the air from her lungs, felt herself flying backward through smoke and flame. She hit concrete hard enough to see stars. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard screaming, heard more explosions as the fire spread to other fuel sources, heard the thunder of boots as federal agents swarmed the position. Kate dragged herself to her knees, coughing smoke, her vision swimming. Through the flames and chaos, she could see Adrian fighting free of his captors, see him stumbling toward her with blood streaming from a dozen wounds. Montero's men were scattering, fleeing the inferno, and federal agents were everywhere now, shouting orders and firing weapons and establishing control. Adrian reached her and collapsed to his knees, his good arm wrapping around her and pulling her against his chest. "You blew up the port," he said, his voice filled with shocked disbelief. "I warned him," Kate gasped. "You magnificent, terrifying, absolutely insane woman." Adrian laughed, the sound edged with hysteria and relief. "You blew up the port. Is Montero dead?" "I don't know. I don't care." He pulled back enough to cup her face in his hands, his dark eyes searching hers. "Are you hurt?" "I don't think so. You're bleeding." "I'm always bleeding." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her mouth, desperate, grateful kisses that tasted like smoke and salt. "You were supposed to run." "I don't run," Kate said. "Not anymore." Around them, the battle was ending. Federal agents had Montero's men in custody, zip-tied, and being loaded into vehicles. The fire crews arrived, battling the blaze Kate had started. And through the smoke, Kate saw a familiar figure being dragged from the wreckage by 2 agents, Carlos Montero, his expensive suit torn and bloody, his face twisted with rage. He was alive, and he was under arrest. "It's over," Adrian said, watching the same scene. "It's actually over." But Kate heard the hollowness in his voice, saw the knowledge in his eyes. The operation was over. The cartel was dismantled. The threat was ended. Which meant Adrian's time was up too. A federal agent approached, a woman in tactical gear with a no-nonsense expression. "Agent Santos?" Adrian straightened carefully, keeping one arm around Kate. "Yes." "We need to debrief you, now, and we need to get you both medical attention." Her eyes flicked to Kate. "You're Catherine Sullivan?" "Yes," Kate said. "Your father is waiting at the federal building. He's been informed you're alive and safe." The agent's expression softened fractionally. "He's requesting immediate contact." Kate felt tears burn her eyes. "Can I see him?" Once we've secured the scene and completed initial processing, in the meantime, the agent gestured to waiting ambulances. Let's get those injuries looked at. The next hours passed in a blur of paramedics and questions and formal statements. Kate was treated for minor burns and smoke inhalation, her wounds superficial compared to Adrian's. She watched them redress his shoulder, stitch the new wound in his side, pump him full of antibiotics and painkillers. He never let go of her hand, even when the federal agents separated them for individual debriefings. Kate told them everything: the gala, the kidnapping, the island, the attack, the desperate boat ride. She told them about Adrian's network, about Dr. Reyes, about how he'd risked his entire operation to keep her alive. The agents listened with professional neutrality, taking notes and recording every word. When they finally let her stop talking, Kate was exhausted down to her bones. "Can I see my father now?" The female agent from the port appeared, her expression gentler than before. "He's here. Are you ready?" Kate nodded, suddenly terrified. What would she say? How could she explain any of this? The agent led her to a private room in the federal building. Kate barely had time to register the sparse furniture before the door opened again and her father rushed in. Thomas Sullivan looked like he'd been through his own war, but when he saw Kate, his face crumpled and he crossed the room in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms with crushing force. "Katie," he sobbed into her hair. "Oh my Katie, I thought... "I'm okay," Kate said, crying just as hard. "Dad, I'm okay." They stood like that for long minutes, holding each other and crying, while federal agents discreetly closed the door to give them privacy. Finally, Thomas pulled back, his hands framing Kate's face while he studied her like he was memorizing every detail. "Where were you?" he asked. "What happened? The agent said you were kidnapped, but you're safe now, and something about the port and an explosion." "It's complicated," Kate said. Someone took me from the gala to protect me from the cartel. They kept me on an island while you testified, and then..." She stopped, unsure how much to tell him about Adrian, about her feelings, about the impossible situation she'd found herself in. "This someone," her father said carefully. "Would his name be Adrian Wolf, or should I say Agent Matias Santos?" Kate's eyes widened. "You know?" "The FBI briefed me an hour ago. Agent Santos has been undercover for 2 years, feeding information to my investigation." Her father's expression was complicated, gratitude and suspicion warring on his face. "They say he saved your life. Multiple times." "He did. They also say he kidnapped you from a charity gala without your consent, held you on a private island, and put you in the middle of a firefight that nearly killed you both." Kate lifted her chin. "He did that too, but only because the alternative was letting the cartel torture and murder me to get to you." Her father was quiet for a long moment. Katie, are you defending him?" "I'm telling you the truth." Kate met her father's eyes steadily. "Adrian Wolf, Matias Santos, whoever he really is, he saved my life when he didn't have to. He gave up 2 years of undercover work. He risked everything because he couldn't stand the thought of letting me die. So yes, I'm defending him." Thomas studied his daughter's face with the intensity of a prosecutor who'd spent 30 years reading people. "You care about him?" It wasn't a question. "Yes," Kate said simply. "I do." "Katie, I know it's insane. I know we barely know each other. I know he's about to disappear into witness protection, and I'll probably never see him again." Her voice cracked. "But I can't change how I feel, Dad, and I won't apologize for it." Her father pulled her into another hug, gentler this time. "I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking you to be careful. This man, he's lived a dangerous life. He's done dangerous things. And people like that, they don't always know how to stop being dangerous." "I know," Kate said into his shoulder. "But people like that also don't know how to let themselves be saved. And maybe he deserves a chance at that too." Thomas kissed the top of her head. "When did my little girl get so wise? When someone gave me a reason to be brave instead of careful." They stayed like that until a knock at the door interrupted them. The female agent poked her head in apologetically. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but we need Miss Sullivan for one more debrief. And Mr. Sullivan, the U.S. Attorney wants to speak with you about tomorrow's proceedings." Kate's father reluctantly released her. "I'll be nearby. If you need anything..." "I know. Kate assured him. She followed the agent through corridors that all looked the same, answering more questions, signing more statements. Hours passed. Night fell outside the building's windows. Kate's exhaustion became a physical weight, dragging at her limbs and making her thoughts sluggish. Finally, mercifully, the agents let her stop. "We have a secure location where you can rest," they told her. "Protected, comfortable. You'll stay there until we've processed all of Montero's associates and confirmed the threat is completely neutralized." "How long will that take?" Kate asked. "A few days, maybe a week." The agent gave her a sympathetic look. "I know you want to go home, but until we're certain, I understand." Kate did understand, though the thought of more days in protective custody made her want to scream. Is Adrian Agent Santos? Is he here?" The agent's expression became carefully neutral. "Agent Santos is being debriefed separately, and once his debrief is complete, he'll be entering witness protection immediately." The words landed like a physical blow. "I don't get to say goodbye?" "I'm sorry, but his cover is completely blown. Every remaining member of the Montero organization, every associated cartel, every criminal he's put away over the past 2 years, they all want him dead. The longer he stays visible, the more danger he's in." The agent's voice softened. "He asked me to tell you something, though. He said to tell you that the music school is real. The foundation will make sure it gets built, and he hopes you'll be there when it opens." Kate felt tears slip down her cheeks. "That's it? That's all he said?" "He said—" The agent hesitated. "He said you made him remember what it feels like to want something other than revenge, and he'll never forget that." It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was all she was going to get. "Can you give him a message for me?" Kate asked. "Of course." Kate thought about everything she wanted to say. "I'm falling in love with you, don't disappear, find a way to come back to me." But those were the words of someone who believed in happy endings. And Kate had learned this week that some stories didn't end happily, they just ended. "Tell him," she said finally, "that I hope he finds whatever he's looking for, and that I'm glad he kidnapped me." The agent's eyebrows rose. "You're glad?" "Yes," Kate smiled through her tears, "because otherwise I never would have known him, and knowing him was worth all of this." The safe house was comfortable and anonymous, a suburban home that could have been anywhere in America. Kate spent 3 days there, watching news coverage of the arrests and trial preparations, fielding calls from her father and Michelle and the school principal, who assured her that her job would be waiting whenever she was ready to return. On the 4th day, the agents told her she could go home. "All of Montero's known associates are in custody," they explained. "The threat is neutralized. You're free." Free felt like a strange word for what Kate was experiencing as she rode back to her small apartment in Coconut Grove. Free, but changed. Free, but marked by everything that had happened. Free, but missing the man who'd shown her what it felt like to choose something dangerous and necessary over something safe and expected. Her apartment looked exactly like she'd left it. Dishes in the sink from the morning of the gala, her good shoes kicked off by the door, a stack of student papers waiting to be graded. Kate walked through the rooms and felt like a ghost haunting her own life. She tried to return to normal, went back to school, where her students welcomed her with homemade cards and awkward hugs. Tried to focus on lesson plans and parent conferences and all the mundane details that had filled her life before. But at night, alone in her apartment, Kate would sit at her secondhand keyboard and play angry, mournful pieces that didn't have names. 2 weeks after the port, she received a package. There was no return address, just her name written in handwriting she didn't recognize. Inside was a folder containing paperwork for the Wolf Foundation's music scholarship program. Everything Adrian had promised, fully funded and ready to implement. Her students would get their instruments, their lessons, their chants. And underneath the paperwork was a single sheet of heavy paper with a handwritten note. "The school breaks ground in 6 months. Buenos Aires, in the neighborhood where my mother taught. I hope you'll come to the opening. I know I won't be there to see it, but knowing you might be makes it mean something more. You were right about music being the only language that can't lie. Thank you for reminding me." M.M. for Matthias, Kate realized. His real name, the one he'd never told her himself. She read the note until she'd memorized every word. then carefully folded it and placed it in her desk drawer next to the business card he'd given her at the gala a lifetime ago. 6 months seemed both impossibly far away and dangerously close. Kate threw herself into work with the kind of desperate intensity that worried her father and made Michelle stage what she called an intervention disguised as girls' night. They sat in Michelle's kitchen with wine. Neither of them was really drinking, while Michelle studied Kate with the concern of someone who'd known her since college. "You're not okay," Michelle said finally. "I'm fine," Kate lied. "You blew up a port and watched the man you're in love with disappear into witness protection. You're the opposite of fine." Michelle reached across the table, covering Kate's hand with hers. "Talk to me, please." So Kate did. She told Michelle everything, not the classified details the FBI had made her promise to keep secret, but the important parts. The way Adrian had looked at her in the surveillance room. The kiss that had tasted like confession. The moment on the boat when she'd realized she'd do anything to keep him alive. The hollow ache in her chest every morning when she woke up and remembered he was gone. "Do you know where he is?" Michelle asked. "No, that's the whole point of witness protection." Kate laughed bitterly. "He could be anywhere. Could be anyone now. Different name, different life, different everything. But he left you a way to find him, the school opening." "Maybe." Kate had thought about that note obsessively, analyzing every word for hidden meaning. "Or maybe he just wanted me to see what we built together. Closure." "You don't believe that." Kate didn't. But believing Adrian wanted her to come, that he might somehow be there despite the impossibility of it, felt dangerous, like hope designed to hurt. The weeks crawled past. Kate watched her students flourish with their new instruments, watched Maria's guitar playing evolve from enthusiastic to genuinely skilled, watched James's perfect pitch finally get proper training at the piano. The scholarship program was everything she'd dreamed of, transforming lives in real time, and it should have been enough. It wasn't. 3 months after the port, Kate's father invited her to dinner at his favorite steakhouse. She knew something was wrong the moment she saw his expression, the careful neutrality that meant he was about to say something she wouldn't like. "The trial starts next week," Thomas said without preamble. "Carlos Montero and 15 co-defendants. The prosecution is confident, but they want me on standby in case they need additional testimony." Kate's stomach clenched. "You already testified to the grand jury. What more could they need?" "Impact testimony. The personal cost of their operations." Her father's eyes were heavy. "You're kidnapping Katie. They want to use it to show the jury the lengths these people will go to." "No." The word came out sharp and immediate. "Dad, no, I can't. I won't. I told them you'd say that." Thomas reached across the table, his large hand engulfing hers. "And I told them I'd support whatever you decided. But Katie, this could be the difference between conviction and acquittal. The jury needs to see you, needs to understand that you're real, that what happened to you was real." Kate pulled her hand away, her chest tight. "They want me to get up in front of the world and talk about the worst week of my life. They want me to what? Cry on the stand so the jury feels bad enough to convict? They want you to tell the truth." Her father's voice was gentle. "That's all. Just the truth." The truth. Kate thought about Adrian bleeding on Dr. Reyes's examination table. About the moment she'd pulled the trigger on that gun, fully prepared to kill someone. About kissing a man whose real name she didn't even know, and meaning every second of it. "I need to think about it," she said finally. Her father nodded, accepting. "The prosecution said they'd need your answer by Friday. That gives you 4 days." Kate spent those 4 days in turmoil. She talked to Michelle, who said she'd support whatever Kate decided, but gently pointed out that testifying might help her find closure. She talked to her therapist, a new addition to her life since the kidnapping, who asked thoughtful questions about what Kate was really afraid of. She didn't talk to Adrian because she couldn't, and that absence felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. On Friday morning, Kate called the prosecutor's office and agreed to testify. The trial was a media circus. Kate watched the coverage from her apartment, saw the protesters outside the courthouse, some demanding justice, others claiming corruption and conspiracy. She saw her father on the courthouse steps, stone-faced and determined, and she saw Carlos Montero being led into the building in an orange jumpsuit and chains, his expression radiating hatred. The prosecution built their case methodically over 2 weeks. Financial experts, law enforcement officials, forensic accountants who'd traced millions in laundered money, former associates who'd taken plea deals and turned state's evidence. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, impossible to refute. Then they called Kate. She walked into that courtroom wearing a navy suit Michelle had helped her pick out, her hands shaking despite the hours of preparation with the prosecutors. The room was packed. Journalists, observers, sketch artists, and in the front row, her father. His eyes met hers as she passed, filled with love and support, an apology for what she was about to endure. Kate took the stand, swore to tell the truth, and looked out at the sea of faces watching her with naked curiosity. The prosecutor, the same sharp-eyed woman who'd questioned her father, approached with a gentle smile. "Miss Sullivan, can you tell the court what you were doing on the evening of February 14th? So Kate told them. She described the charity gala, the burgundy dress she'd bought on sale, her hopes of securing funding for her students. She told them about meeting a man named Adrian Wolfe, who'd promised to help, about how that promise had been real, but everything else had been calculated to save her life. "And why did your life need saving?" the prosecutor asked. "Because of my father's investigation into the Montero organization." Kate's voice steadied as she spoke. "Because Carlos Montero had put a contract on me to force my father to withdraw his testimony. The defense attorneys objected repeatedly, but the judge overruled them." Kate continued, describing the helicopter ride, the island, the terror of waking up a prisoner. She carefully avoided mentioning Adrian's real identity or his undercover status. The prosecutors had coached her on what was classified, but she told them about the attack, about Mateo's death, about the desperate boat ride while Adrian bled. "And at the port," the prosecutor said, "what did you witness?" Kate looked directly at Carlos Montero. His eyes were black with rage, his hands clenched on the defense table. "Good," she thought. "Let him see what he did. Let him know he failed." "I witnessed Carlos Montero holding a federal agent at gunpoint," Kate said clearly. "I witnessed him ordering his men to capture me. And I witnessed him willing to kill anyone who stood between him and his drug shipment, even knowing federal agents were minutes away." "Why didn't you run when you had the chance?" "Because running meant letting them kill the man who'd saved my life." Kate's voice cracked slightly. "And I'd spent a week being a victim. I was done with that." The courtroom was silent. Even the journalists had stopped typing. "So what did you do?" the prosecutor asked. "I threatened to blow up the fuel drums unless they released him." Kate saw several jurors' eyes widen. "And when they didn't, I shot them. The drums, I mean. I started the fire that destroyed half the port." "You could have died." "Yes." Kate met the prosecutor's eyes. "But at least I would have died choosing to fight instead of choosing to hide." The prosecutor smiled. No further questions. The defense attorneys tried to break her testimony, tried to suggest she was a willing participant in Adrian's schemes, tried to paint her as unreliable or biased or too traumatized to remember clearly. But Kate had spent 2 months preparing for this, and she didn't break. She answered every question with calm precision, never wavering, never backing down. When she finally stepped down from the stand 3 hours later, she was exhausted but whole. She'd survived. More than that, she'd fought back. Her father met her in the hallway, pulling her into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "So incredibly proud." "Is it enough?" Kate asked. "Will they convict?" "After that testimony, I'd bet my career on it." He was right. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts for all defendants. Carlos Montero was sentenced to life without parole. His associates received sentences ranging from 20 to 50 years. The Montero cartel, which had operated with impunity for 3 decades, was dismantled completely. Kate watched the sentencing on TV from her apartment, a glass of wine in her hand, and Michelle beside her on the couch. When the judge read the final sentence, Michelle squeezed her hand. "It's over," Michelle said. "It's really over." "Yes," Kate agreed. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the end of one chapter and the terrifying beginning of another. 3 months later, Kate boarded a plane to Buenos Aires. She'd told herself 100 times she was going only for the school opening, only to see what Adrian's foundation had built, only to honor the memory of his mother and brother. She told Michelle and her father and anyone else who asked that she had no expectations of seeing Adrian, that she understood witness protection meant he was gone forever, that this was about closure. She was lying to all of them, including herself. Buenos Aires in spring was beautiful. Jacaranda trees in purple bloom, warm air carrying the scent of grilled meat and strong coffee, music drifting from open windows. Kate checked into a small hotel in Palermo and spent 2 days wandering the city, trying not to think about the fact that Adrian had grown up here, had walked these streets, had learned to become whoever he needed to be in these neighborhoods. The school opening was on a Saturday. Kate arrived early, when workers were still setting up chairs and hanging banners that read Fundación Marcos Santos, Centro de Música, Marcos Foundation, Music Center. Kate felt tears prick her eyes at the simple dedication. The building itself was modest but beautiful, a renovated warehouse with high ceilings and excellent acoustics flooded with natural light. Inside, she found practice rooms with brand new instruments, a small recital hall with a gorgeous piano, teaching studios equipped with everything young musicians could need. "It's perfect," Kate whispered to no one. "My mother would have loved it." Kate spun around so fast she nearly fell. And there, standing in the doorway like something conjured from desperate hoping, was Adrian. Except it wasn't Adrian. Not quite. His hair was lighter, sun-streaked in a way that looked natural but probably wasn't. He'd grown a short beard that changed the shape of his face. He wore glasses with dark frames that made him look professorial rather than dangerous. But his eyes, those dark, intense eyes that had watched her across a ballroom and promised protection and disaster in equal measure, those were exactly the same. "You came," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "You're here." Kate's voice came out barely above a whisper. "How are you? Witness protection. You shouldn't be—" "I know." Adrian moved into the room, closing the door behind him with one hand. Kate noticed he moved stiffly, favoring his left side where the bullet wound had been. "I have about 2 hours before my handler realizes I'm gone, but I needed to see you." 2 hours. Kate laughed, the sound edged with hysteria. "You risked your entire new life for 2 hours?" "I risked it the moment I saw your photo in that file," Adrian said. "Everything since then has just been following through on that first terrible decision." They stood on opposite sides of the room, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. Kate drank in the sight of him, alive, whole, here, and tried to reconcile this lighter-haired, bearded stranger with the man who'd kidnapped her from a gala 6 months ago. "You look different," she said finally. "I am different. New name, new identity, new life in a city I've never lived in before." Adrian's smile was bitter. "I'm a music teacher now, actually. Piano. Seemed appropriate." Kate's breath caught. "You're teaching?" "Trying to. Turns out being good at playing doesn't make you good at teaching." He took a step closer. "I could use some advice from an expert." "Don't!" Kate's voice cracked. "Don't do this. Don't show up after 6 months and make jokes and look at me like I've thought about you every day since the port." Adrian closed the distance between them in 3 strides. "Like I've started 100 messages I couldn't send? Like seeing you walk into this building just now felt like I could finally breathe again?" "You left." Kate's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "You disappeared without even saying goodbye." "Because saying goodbye would have killed me." Adrian's voice went raw. "Kate, do you have any idea how hard it was to walk away from you? To let the agents take me into processing, into a new life, knowing I'd never see you again?" "Then why did you?" The question came out sharp as broken glass. "If it was so hard, why did you do it?" "Because I had to keep you safe." Adrian grabbed her shoulders, his control finally shattering. "Because every criminal organization in the Western Hemisphere wants me dead, and being near me puts a target on you. Because you deserve a normal life with someone who isn't looking over his shoulder every second. Because—" Kate kissed him. She grabbed the front of his shirt and pulled him down and kissed him with 6 months of anger and longing and desperate relief. Adrian made a sound somewhere between a groan and a sob, his arms coming around her to crush her against his chest. They kissed like drowning people finding air, like soldiers coming home from war, like all the desperate cliches Kate had rolled her eyes at before she understood what they meant. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "I'm still dangerous," he said. "I'm still living under an assumed name, I still can't promise you anything resembling normal. I don't want normal, Kate said fiercely. I want you. Whatever name you're using, whatever life you're living. I want you. Kate, you made me brave, she interrupted. You made me learn how to fight instead of hide. You made me believe I could choose something dangerous and necessary over something safe and expected. So don't you dare tell me I can't choose you. Adrian pulled back slightly, his hands framing her face while his eyes searched hers. You testified at the trial. I watched the coverage. You were magnificent. You watched? Every second they'd show me. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I wanted to be there, wanted to sit in that courtroom and watch you make Montero pay for what he tried to do to you, but you couldn't. Kate covered his hands with hers. I know, I understand. Do you? Adrian's voice was strained. Do you understand that us, it can't be public? That I can't go back to the States, can't be seen with you where anyone might recognize me? That any relationship we have would be stolen moments and encrypted messages and always looking over our shoulders? I understand that you're giving me all the reasons to walk away, Kate said. What I don't understand is why you came here if you really wanted me to go. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed, the sound broken and beautiful. Because I'm selfish. Because I told myself I'd just see you one more time, just confirm you were okay, and then I'd disappear again. But the moment you walked through that door, he stopped, his jaw tightening. I can't let you go, Kate. I should, but I can't. Then don't. Kate rose on her toes, bringing her mouth close to his. Stop trying to protect me from yourself. Stop deciding what's best for me. Just let me choose you. It won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Adrian kissed her again, slower this time, with a tenderness that made her chest ache. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. I'm living in Montevideo, he said quietly, teaching piano at a music academy. My name is Daniel Romero. I have a small apartment near the beach and a cat I accidentally adopted. He smiled. It's boring and safe and so normal it makes my teeth hurt. But it could be if you wanted. I want, Kate said immediately. Whatever that looks like, however we make it work. I want it. Your job. Your students, your father. My students will have other teachers. My father will understand. And my job. Kate thought about the scholarship program, about the foundation that bore Adrian's false name and his very real commitment to helping kids like Marco. Actually, I've been thinking about that. The foundation needs someone to run the international programs. Someone who understands music education and speaks English and doesn't mind traveling. Adrian's eyes widened. Kate, you can't. That's your whole life. My whole life was built on being careful and responsible and never taking risks, Kate interrupted. And then you kidnapped me and everything changed. I changed. So yes, I can. And I will. If you'll have me. Adrian laughed, pulling her close again. You're insane. Completely, magnificently insane. I learned from the best. They stood like that, wrapped in each other's arms, while outside the school began to fill with people. Kate could hear voices, the sound of instruments being tuned, the excited chatter of children who were about to discover what music could mean in their lives. We should go out there, Adrian said, not moving. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. Your handler is going to be furious that you're gone. Absolutely livid. Adrian grinned. Worth it, though. They walked out together, Adrian's hand finding hers and holding on like he might never let go. The school's courtyard was packed now. Local families, music teachers, foundation representatives, and scattered throughout the crowd, young people whose eyes held the same hunger Kate saw in her students back in Miami. The hunger for something beautiful, something that made sense when the world didn't, something that said you matter, and you're seen, and you're worth investing in. The ceremony was conducted in Spanish that Kate only partially understood, but she caught the important parts. The school would offer free music education to any child who wanted it. There would be instruments available to borrow, professional instruction, performance opportunities. It would be a place where talent mattered more than money, where access wasn't limited by circumstance. An older woman who introduced herself as Elena Gutierrez, the school's director and a former student of Adrian's mother, spoke about the importance of giving children tools to express themselves, to find beauty in difficult circumstances, to know they deserved space in the world. Music saved my life, she said in Spanish, her voice carrying across the courtyard. When I was young and everything was hard, Senora Santos taught me that I could create something beautiful with these hands, that I had value beyond what anyone told me I was worth. This school is her legacy, and we will make sure every child who walks through these doors knows they matter. Kate felt tears streaming down her face. Beside her, Adrian's hand tightened on hers, his expression raw with grief and pride and something like peace. The ceremony ended with a performance. Local children who'd been learning instruments in preparation for the opening, their playing enthusiastic and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Kate watched them and thought about Maria with her guitar, about James discovering his perfect pitch, about all the kids whose lives would be changed by the simple gift of access and belief. When the last note faded and the crowd applauded, Adrian leaned close to whisper in her ear, "I have to go soon. My handler is probably already tracing my phone." Kate nodded, her throat tight. "When will I see you again?" "Give me 2 weeks to smooth things over with witness protection. Then, can you come to Montevideo? Just for a visit, to see if we... He stopped, searching for words. "To see if this is real," Kate finished. "If it works outside of crisis and adrenaline and desperate situations." Yes. Kate thought about the question she should ask. The practical, responsible question about logistics and safety and long-term planning. Instead, she asked the only question that mattered. "Do you love me?" Adrian's eyes widened, then softened with something that made her breath catch. "From the moment you threatened to blow up a port to save me," he said. "Probably before that, if I'm honest. Maybe from the moment you told me you felt it too on the yacht. Or the moment you looked at me across that ballroom like I was something dangerous and worth the risk anyway." "That's not an answer." "Yes," Adrian said simply. "I love you. Completely. Catastrophically. In every language I speak, and some I don't." Kate rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and brief and filled with promise. "Then I'll see you in Montevideo in 2 weeks, and we'll figure out the rest from there." She watched him slip away through the crowd, watched him become just another face among hundreds, and knew that finding him again would be easy. They'd already found each other against impossible odds, across violence and fear and every logical reason to walk away. 2 weeks and an ocean were nothing compared to that. Kate stayed in Buenos Aires for 3 more days, helping with the school's initial operations and meeting with foundation representatives about the international program coordinator position. They offered it to her on the spot. Apparently having the person who'd literally blown up a port on your resume carried a certain cachet in the world of nonprofit work. "I'll need to give proper notice at my current school," Kate told them. "Arrange things with my father, find someone to take over my apartment, but I can start in 6 weeks. "Perfect," said the foundation director, a brisk woman named Claudia, who seemed completely unfazed by Kate's unconventional path to this position. "We have programs launching in 3 countries this year. You'll be busy." Busy was good. Busy meant less time to worry about all the ways this could go wrong, all the reasons choosing a life with a man in witness protection was insane. Kate flew back to Miami and spent a week putting her life in order. She told her students first, fighting tears as she explained that she was taking a new position, but that the scholarship program would continue and grow. They threw her a goodbye party with homemade cards and a group performance of Hallelujah that left everyone crying. Her father took the news better than she'd expected. "You're sure about this?" Thomas asked over dinner at his house. "About him? About leaving everything you've built here?" "I'm terrified," Kate admitted. "But yes, I'm sure. Dad, I know this seems crazy. It seems exactly right for you." Her father smiled, though his eyes were sad. "I've watched you these past 6 months, Katie. You've been going through the motions, teaching and functioning, and doing everything you're supposed to do. But you weren't happy. Not really. Not until that invitation to the school opening arrived and I saw something light up in you again." "I love him," Kate said simply. "I know it's fast. I know it's complicated. I know all the logical arguments against it. But I love him. And I think he needs someone to love him. To see him as more than just a tool for justice or a weapon against the cartels." Thomas reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "Then go. Love him. Build something beautiful together. And if he ever hurts you, remind him that I'm a very connected federal prosecutor with friends in several international agencies." Kate laughed through her tears. "I'll be sure to mention that." 2 weeks later, Kate landed in Montevideo with 2 suitcases and a heart full of hope and terror in equal measure. Daniel, she reminded herself, he was Daniel Romero now, met her at the airport wearing his glasses and beard, looking nervous and hopeful, and so happy to see her that Kate's knees went weak. "You came," he said, the same words he'd used in Buenos Aires. "I said I would." Kate dropped her bags and walked into his arms, feeling them close around her like coming home. "Show me your boring, normal life." His apartment was small but bright, overlooking the beach with floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the sound of waves. The cat, a scruffy orange tabby he'd named Tango, wound around Kate's legs while Adrian made coffee and gave her a tour that took approximately 90 seconds. "It's not much," he said, suddenly self-conscious. "I know you're used to—" "It's perfect," Kate interrupted. She meant it. The apartment was simple and clean and completely free of the expensive, dangerous trappings of Adrian Wolf's false life. This was real. This was him. They spent the next 3 days learning each other outside of crisis. Kate discovered that Adrian, Daniel, was terrible at cooking but made exceptional coffee, that he played piano for hours when he was anxious, working through complicated pieces until his hands remembered what his mind couldn't process, that he had nightmares about the port, about the island, about variations on losing her that hadn't happened but might have. Adrian learned that Kate was bossy in the mornings and needed coffee before conversation, that she hummed without realizing it when she was reading, that she had opinions about everything from politics to proper tango technique and wasn't afraid to argue them passionately. They learned how to be together when no one was shooting at them, when the stakes were as simple as whose turn it was to buy groceries and whether to watch a movie or walk on the beach at sunset. On the 4th day, Kate's phone rang. Michelle's name flashed on the screen. "Tell me everything," Michelle demanded the moment Kate answered. "And I mean everything. Is he there? Is it amazing? Are you deliriously happy or already regretting this?" Kate glanced at Adrian, who was attempting to teach Tango to play fetch with 0 success. "It's good. Really good. Weird, but good." "Weird how?" "Weird like we're figuring out how to be normal people together instead of people surviving danger together." Kate moved to the window, watching waves crash against the shore. "It's quieter than I expected, less dramatic." "That's called a healthy relationship, hun." "I know. It just feels strange after everything that happened." "Give it time," Michelle advised. "You two earned the right to be boring and domestic. Embrace it." Kate did try to embrace it. She and Adrian fell into a rhythm over the following weeks, teaching during the day, cooking together in the evenings, walking on the beach while talking about everything and nothing. He told her stories about growing up in Buenos Aires, about his mother's piano lessons, and Marco's terrible jokes, and the moment he'd decided to dedicate his life to destroying the people who'd destroyed his family. Kate told him about her own childhood, about learning to play piano from YouTube videos because her family couldn't afford lessons, about the teacher who'd noticed her talent and changed her trajectory completely. "That's why you do it," Adrian said one evening as they sat on his small balcony watching the sunset. "Teaching, I mean, you're paying forward what someone gave you." "I guess so." Kate leaned against his shoulder. "What are you paying forward?" "A chance," Adrian said quietly. "The chance Marco never got. The chance my mother wanted to give all those kids in our neighborhood." He was quiet for a moment. "I spent so long focused on revenge, on punishment, on making the people who hurt my family suffer. But building the school, teaching these kids in Montevideo, it feels like finally doing something that would actually make my mother proud." Kate took his hand, threading her fingers through his. She would be proud. Of the school, of you, of who you've become despite everything. Despite being a criminal, despite the things I did undercover, because you chose to become something better. Kate turned to face him fully. You could have stayed Adrian Wolf forever, could have kept that money and that lifestyle and disappeared into it. But you didn't. You chose to use it to help people instead. Adrian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I chose you too," he murmured against her hair. Best decision I ever made. 6 weeks after Kate arrived in Montevideo, she started her new position with the foundation. The work was challenging and rewarding, coordinating music education programs across 3 countries, working with local communities, ensuring that kids who needed access to instruments and instruction got it. She traveled frequently, sometimes with Adrian when their schedules aligned, sometimes alone. It wasn't perfect. They had arguments about whose turn it was to feed tango and whether it was safe for Adrian to attend a foundation event where people might recognize him, and how to balance Kate's need for independence with Adrian's protective instincts. They had hard conversations about the future, about whether witness protection would ever really end, about what it meant to build a life together when his entire identity was a construct. But they also had quiet mornings drinking coffee on the balcony and passionate debates about music theory and stolen afternoons on the beach. They had the music school in Buenos Aires, which flourished under Elena's direction, and sent them photos of students performing, growing, thriving. They had each other, against all odds and logic. 1 year after the port, Kate received an email from her father with a subject line that made her breath catch. "You need to see this." The email contained a news article about Carlos Montero's death in prison. Another inmate, someone with connections to a rival cartel, had killed him in what officials were calling a gang-related incident. Kate stared at the article for a long time, trying to process how she felt. Relief, certainly. Justice, maybe. But also a strange hollowness, like the end of a story she'd stopped actively reading but had always been aware of in the background. She showed Adrian that evening when he got home from teaching. He read it twice, his expression unreadable. "How do you feel?" Kate asked. "I don't know." Adrian set down his phone, running a hand through his hair. "I spent years wanting him dead, wanting to watch him suffer the way my family suffered. And now that he's gone," he stopped, struggling for words. "It doesn't feel like I thought it would." "What did you think it would feel like?" "Triumphant, maybe. Satisfied. Like I'd finally accomplished what I set out to do." Adrian looked at her, his dark eyes troubled. "But mostly I just feel tired and grateful that it's really over." Kate moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "It's been over. We've been building something new for a year now." "I know, but there was always that shadow, always the possibility that somehow he'd get out, that I'd have to look over my shoulder forever." Adrian's grip tightened on her hand. "And now I don't. Now I can just be Daniel Romero, piano teacher, cat owner, boyfriend of an amazing woman who puts up with my nightmares and overprotective tendencies." "Fiancé," Kate corrected. Adrian's head snapped up. "What?" Kate pulled a small box from her pocket. She'd been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small stone. "I know we can't exactly have a big public wedding given the whole witness protection thing," Kate said, her heart hammering. "And I know this is unconventional and probably breaking several rules about who's supposed to propose. But I love you, and I want to build a life with you, and I'm tired of calling you my boyfriend when you're so much more than that." Adrian stared at the ring, then at her, his expression cycling through shock and disbelief, and something that looked like joy. "Kate, you don't have to answer right now," she said quickly. "I know it's complicated, and we'd need to figure out how it works legally with your identity." And Adrian kissed her, stopping the nervous babbling. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with tears. "Yes," he said simply. "To all of it. Yes." They were married 3 months later in a small ceremony on the beach in Montevideo, attended by Dr. Reyes, Elena from the Buenos Aires school, a handful of Adrian's colleagues from the music academy, and via video call, Kate's father and Michelle. It wasn't legal in any official sense. Daniel Romero couldn't exactly marry Catherine Sullivan without raising questions his witness protection handler would have strongly objected to, but it was real to them, and that was enough. Kate wore a simple white dress and carried tropical flowers. Adrian wore a suit that made him look distinguished and nervous, and so handsome Kate's breath caught when she saw him. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to choose each other every day, to build something beautiful from the wreckage of what they'd survived, to remember that love wasn't just about the dramatic gestures, but about showing up consistently, even when it was hard. "I promise to let you protect me sometimes," Kate said, her voice wavering, "but also to protect you when you forget you need protecting too." "I promise to trust you with my real name," Adrian said, and Kate saw him mouth the words Matias Santos, silently, a gift he couldn't give aloud but could give her this way. And with my heart, which is more terrifying but also the best thing I've ever done. They sealed their promises with a kiss while the sun set over the Atlantic and Tango, who'd somehow gotten loose from his carrier, wound between their feet demanding attention. 2 years later, Kate stood in front of the expanded Buenos Aires school, now serving over 300 students, and watched a performance by the advanced orchestra. The music was beautiful and complex, the kind of piece that required discipline and passion in equal measure. In the front row, she saw parents crying with pride, saw younger students watching with wide eyes, saw the kind of transformation that happened when you gave people the tools and belief to become more than their circumstances suggested they could be. Beside her, Adrian, she still sometimes thought of him as Adrian in her head, though he'd been Daniel so long it was becoming natural, squeezed her hand. "Your mother would love this," Kate whispered. "She would love you," Adrian corrected, "for making it possible, for making me possible." Kate leaned against his shoulder, watching the young musicians pour their hearts into Beethoven. In her pocket was a letter from her students back in Miami, telling her about their semester and the new teacher, and how they missed her but were so proud of the work she was doing. In her bag was a plane ticket to Sao Paulo, where the foundation was launching another program next month. Her life looked nothing like she'd imagined 2 years ago when she'd put on a burgundy dress and attended a charity gala hoping to help her students. She'd lost the safety and predictability she'd built so carefully. She'd gained danger and uncertainty and a man with more identities than names. But she'd also gained this: music filling a beautiful space, children finding their voices, the knowledge that she and Adrian had turned their trauma into something that helped people, that they'd chosen each other despite every reason not to, and kept choosing each other through the boring, difficult, beautiful work of building a life together. The concert ended to thunderous applause. Kate and Adrian stayed long after the crowd dispersed, walking through the school's halls and remembering the man it was built for. Marco Santos, who'd never gotten the chance to become who he might have been, but whose memory was helping hundreds of kids become who they could be. "I think we did okay," Adrian said quietly as they stood in front of the dedication plaque. "With all of this. With us." "Better than okay," Kate said. "We did something worth surviving for." They walked out into the Buenos Aires night, hand in hand, and headed back to their hotel. Tomorrow, they'd fly back to Montevideo, back to their small apartment, and demanding Kat and the quiet life they'd built from the ashes of who they used to be. Back to teaching and foundation work and ordinary days that somehow felt more precious because they'd both learned how quickly the ordinary could become extraordinary, how fast safety could shatter, how much it meant to choose love anyway. Kate thought about the young woman who'd attended that gala, who'd been so careful and responsible and afraid to take risks. She barely recognized her anymore. That woman had died the moment she'd trusted a stranger with dark eyes and dangerous promises. In her place was someone braver, fiercer, someone who'd learned that the best things in life often came disguised as terrible decisions. Someone who'd chosen to blow up a port and chase a man into witness protection and build a life from nothing but love and determination. Someone who was finally exactly who she was meant to become. And as they walked through the Buenos Aires night, with music still echoing in their ears and tomorrow's possibilities stretching ahead, Kate thought that maybe the best love stories weren't the ones that made sense or followed rules or looked like what anyone expected. Maybe the best love stories were the ones where you chose each other anyway, built something beautiful from the wreckage, and remembered that surviving was only the beginning. The real victory was learning how to live.